I know my microphone's off. I'm just talking to myself for a second. Okay. Looks good. Oh my god. The first chatter of the day. Hello. Always special. And the second, even better, with short fat otaku. Incredible. Yeah, definitely my fault. I'm encouraging it. Encouraging the bad behavior. We're gonna do some review today, just like reviewing content that people ask me to review. I might put up like a thing saying that. I think that would be good. I think I should just watch MasterChef for like 45 minutes. Go eat. Go use the restroom. And then when I get banned, I get put in the newspapers. Yeah. Short Fat Otaku's videos are good. I've been watching them for a little while. I've sent like a few of them to my friends. Like, he did one talking about like weird housing advertisements that people put out. And I sent it to my friend and was like, this is how I imagine it's like in Portland. Because he lives up there. I just imagine it's like a leftist nightmare. Yeah, he was like, oh yeah, everyone like jokes about it. Portland was like the home of the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, right? No, that was Seattle. Oh, Seattle. It's the same thing. It's all the northwest. I agree. It's all just nonsense up there. Okay. My most controversial food take. You know what I like to do? I like to get goldfish and I just shovel them into my mouth until my mouth is like bursting, like full of goldfish. And then what I do is I drink water and let it like turn the goldfish into mush in my mouth. And I swirl around the salty goldfish mush mixture. That's my most controversial food take. Orange juice also works for this because it's like slightly acidic. But yeah. I don't have goldfish right now, unfortunately. But if I did, I'd prove it in a heartbeat. Maybe next stream I'll prove it. Okay. I also have this. I just cut my finger, unfortunately. Hanz is a lefterly type of person in Twitch politics. Okay, we're gonna add Chrome to this. I'm just fucking around with my stream overlay. Big buff blonde guy. Yeah, that's accurate. I guess what I need to figure out is like the blank space at the bottom of the stream, because that infuriates me. Am I a fan of Hanabi? Do you mean like Hasanabi? Hassan? Not really. Okay, we gotta lock this so I'm not. I don't know. I do understand the appeal of Hassan. I think the effort is just very like low with a lot of Hassan's streams. I feel like my girlfriend is a fan of Hassan though. Okay, I'm gonna go up and just like, ooh, okay. There's a JJ McCullough video, What's Good and Bad About Conservatism, which I think I've watched and I think I've agreed with it. I think he talks about like these like small c conservative values. I just watched your Puberty Blockers convo. Was so great. I'm glad you thought so. I think it, because I had a Puberty Blockers convo yesterday, And it was just sort of silly. I was just being sort of like aggressive, but we like very quickly figured out that they didn't actually disagree with my take. They just had like, I don't know, misinterpreted it or something. And also wanted to tell me that like there were medicines to like help with bone density, which is true, but like not at all the point that I was getting at. Okay, we're gonna watch this video.
Calling themselves a conservative. So when someone goes around calling themselves a conservative, what does that even mean? I've been thinking about this a lot lately because it seems that conservative is becoming a pretty big category to describe a pretty large group of people. Politicians like President Trump and Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz, they all say they're conservatives. So do media people like Sean Hannity and Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson. And so do all of these wild internet characters like Diamond and Silk and Laura Loomer and Paul Joseph Watson. And then you have these even more extreme people like Mike Cernovich and Milo Yiannopoulos and Alex Jones. They all claim to be conservative too. Now, I actually self-identify as a conservative as well, but when I look at some of these characters, I really feel pretty turned off. In fact, I would say that I find a lot of these people like quite actively repulsive. I don't personally feel I have a lot in common with these people, even though in theory, I guess we're on the same side. We're in the same category. So let us try to figure out.
It's really interesting that he says this, because like this is often how I feel as well, where I certainly don't identify as left-wing or progressive, and I feel very frustrated with the progressive movement, but I have a difficult time pinpointing myself politically because I'm also not a fan of a lot of what I see coming from the conservative side. And personally, I chalk this up to like an inability of conservatives to really live their principles. And instead, like, they devolve into this sort of political infighting and, you know, playing political games, which the left does too, to an extent. But when I think about like the higher ideals of politics, it's the right wing that appeals to me. But we'll continue on.
How we have gotten here. How conservative became this really big, giant category that encompasses so many different types of people. So there are basically two theories that explain why people have political opinions. One is that we choose our political opinions in a completely rational context. Like, I guess at some point we just sit down with a big book of all the different political philosophies and then we pick the one that we like best. Like, I mean, obviously no one literally says that this is how it works, but I do think that when you hear people like Ben Shapiro talk, they would say that, you know, they're conservative because conservatism is like the most logical, fact-based philosophy out there. Or in other words, like his political worldview is primarily an intellectual thing. But then the other theory holds that political opinions are just sort of something you develop naturally based on the kind of person that you are. In other words, your politics will probably just be an extension of something else about you, like how old you are, or how religious you are, or how much money you have, or how you feel about authority figures and things like that. So for someone like me, you could say that I'm conservative because I grew up in a very comfortable white middle-class family, and I've always been pretty trusting of authority figures. Ever since I was a little kid, I always cared a lot about doing the right thing and pleasing my parents and teachers and never getting into any sort of trouble. I mean, I have always been pretty eccentric, and I like to ask a lot of questions, but I don't think in any real sense I've ever been much of a rebel. By the time I was in high school, which is I think when most people sort of start to politically self-identify.
Can I copy this? Sweet. All right. Okay, sweet. Okay, good.
I was very obviously conservative because I had started to develop this philosophy that held that basically the way things currently were was the way things should, always be. People who were overly critical of the way things were obviously bad and wrong. One of the values my parents really drilled into me when I was a child was to never be ungrateful or spoiled. And as a result, I always sort of associated rebellious or unsatisfied people with being ungrateful, like that these were people who were not sufficiently appreciative of how good we all had it. For this reason, the sort of conservative politics that I was always the most attracted to was the one that had a message like, hey, isn't it awesome that you get to live in this wonderful, rich, free society? You should be grateful for this and fight for the preservation of the social order that gives you and all of your friends and relations all these great things. And you should do what you can to ensure that everyone else has access to all of these great things as well. Specifically, this means stick up for our capitalist economic system because it provides our wealth and prosperity, support stable traditional families because they provide our lives with structure and meaning, be grateful for authority figures like the police and military because they keep us safe, respect our democratic political system because it gives us the freedom to think and believe whatever we want, and be respectful of Christianity too because it gives our society its moral foundation. This is basically what I would call the traditional conservative worldview, the worldview of someone who sees the value in basically keeping things as they are, the worldview of someone who doesn't have much interest in challenging the status quo. A lot of people are not really conservative in this way anymore, however. A lot of the most famous and influential conservatives today are a lot younger and a lot more radical. They don't seem as motivated by gratitude and respect as much as a spirit of rebellion and a desire to stir up a lot of trouble. And why is this? It seems like a bit of a contradiction. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with what I was talking about before, which is this idea that a lot of politics is as rooted in personality as it is in ideas. These days, a lot of famous conservatives, particularly young famous conservatives, make a big deal of the fact fact that they used to be left-wingers.
Because you used to be a liberal.
Right.
And then you became a conservative.
That's correct.
Conservatives like to hear stories like this because, you know, a lot of folks treat politics like religion these days, and everyone likes to hear stories of conversion. But I think that having so many former left-wingers in the modern conservative movement has had a more dramatic consequence than some people realize. I mean, if you believe that people get their political views just from ideas, then it's really not that big a deal. Conservative ideas, I guess, are just better and more persuasive. But if you believe that a lot of people primarily get into politics because of their personality, then one consequence of this is that you're going to have a lot of people with the fundamental left-wing personality who are now embracing right-wing politics. And that seems to create a very novel and strange flavor of person. In contrast to your stereotypical person who likes things the way they are and is thus drawn to conservative politics, how would we generalize the stereotypical sort of person who is drawn to left-wing politics? To start, it would certainly be somebody who thinks that the way things are isn't that great and society needs a lot of fixing. They would also be generally distrustful of authority figures because, of course, authority figures would be complicit in enforcing the unjust society. They would be open to radical, dramatic solutions to fixing perceived problems, and they'd have no problem being seen as a rebel or somebody that's very controversial and disruptive. So you can probably see where I'm going with this. A lot of today's right-wing converts still have a lot of these stereotypically left-wing personality traits. They still view their society as like fundamentally bad and broken. They still think people with power don't deserve to be trusted, and they still want to have this glamorous image as like provocative rebels. The big difference is they've just swapped out left-wing answers for right-wing answers. Noted controversial guy Gavin McInnes actually has a pretty good video about this on YouTube. He starts out being this super punk rock guy, and then at the end he morphs into a conservative. His thesis is that there's no real difference between being a rebel and being a conservative these days. Now again, how can this be possible? How is it that the rebel personality can so easily segue into right-wing politics?
I think this is interesting. I don't necessarily believe that people just like have a rebel personality and they're like inserting whatever political position justifies that or allows them to act as rebels. Rather, I think it's like reversed, where people will start with a sort of political impulse, right, towards like great authority or a great deal of freedom or whatever. But both people who prefer a great deal of authority, i.e. like monarchists, and people who prefer a great deal of freedom, like anarcho-capitalists, they're both going to oppose the current social order. So it's not like they started out both as rebels, but they both got to the point of being rebellious as a result of disliking the status quo. I think the reason why conservatism and the right wing have attracted more rebels as time has gone on is because the broader culture and the powers that be have gotten more progressive. And so naturally, right-wing voices that are able to be a little bit more outspoken or rebellious are going to be pushed to the forefront.
Well, this gets into one of the fundamental challenges of conservatism as a workable philosophy. It is actually very difficult to make a political philosophy that is just based around respecting the current way of doing things. For example, if I'm a conservative in Canada, does that mean I should support the Canadian healthcare system just because it currently exists? A lot of people would say it is a socialist system, but because it is the system that currently exists, does that mean it is the correct conservative position to support it? By that logic...
This is another big thing. Like, conservatives always push for keeping things like stagnant, but it prevents like rightward movement in a lot of times. So like the progressives will shift things left, and then you get someone like Trump in the White House. And what does Trump do? Like maybe he passes tax cuts, but he's not like fundamentally altering the structure of American society, right? Like a single payer or multiplayer socialized healthcare system would fundamentally alter the way that Americans relate to the world. It would change how they relate to healthcare, which is a big part of it, you know, everyday existence. The right wing doesn't really have policies like that or positions like that.
Republicans should support Obamacare too, because it currently exists. If you take this to its logical extreme, no conservative should ever support repealing any law ever, since the second any law is passed, it becomes part of the status quo. Or what about, say, if I lived in Cuba? Would supporting that country's communist dictatorship be the conservative thing to do, just because that's been their way of doing things for a long time now? Or what about the fundamentalist regime in Iran? It's a pretty conservative government by the standards of that country. So you could say that the conservative position is to support socialism in Canada, communism in Cuba, and fundamentalism in Iran, because all of those ideas represent the status quo. It is problems like this that led to the creation of a more universalist conservative philosophy in the mid to late 20th century, which was really more of what we in the Anglo-American world would call classical liberalism, or what they still call in a lot of other places just plain liberalism. Classical liberalism of this sort is basically just the ideology of freedom, particularly individual freedom as like the highest social good, mixed in with a love of free market capitalism as like...
Which is a very left-wing thing, I think. The desire for like freedom. Because that's how you get things like gay rights and trans rights. When you maximize freedom and just say like, everyone can do whatever they want in their own, you know, corners, as long as it's not affecting society. That strikes me as a very left-wing, position.
The best economic system. So this more modern and narrow definition of conservatism basically says that the Anglo-American tradition of classical liberalism is the main thing we should be concerned about conserving. So a conservative of this sort would say that the Canadian healthcare system or the Cuban dictatorship or the Iranian theocracy are not in fact worth conserving because these things go against the values of classical liberalism. In those cases, the correct conservative position would actually be to favor radical change. And this, in short, is the reason why a lot of young people have found a way to be rebels and conservatives at the same time. These sorts of people would say, like, our society has become so corrupted with left-wing, anti-classical liberal ideas that we must really rebel and fight to preserve them. The authority figures that we would normally trust to preserve our classical liberal foundations are now warring against them, which means the whole world's kind of gone topsy-turvy. And in fairness, I do think there's a lot of truth to this. In a democratic society,
The thing is that classical liberal ideals create progressive ideals. Classical liberal ideals, which allow people to just, interact in society without guardrails, that leads to like societal entropy. You can't have a strong country with a strong moral foundation if you just like let people do whatever they want. Naturally, man is going to tend towards chaos. Man is going to tend towards wanting to do what is pleasurable and hedonistic and good in the moment, and not towards what is going to be good spiritually or in the long term. And so society, what society needs is guardrails, not classical liberalism that lets people do whatever they want.
a lot of different ideologies will be able to come to power, which means that the conservative position will sometimes be the oppositional, rebellious one. But let us not let personality completely off the hook either. The obvious question is to ask why exactly some people get so upset with the supposed left-wing undermining of classical liberal values. Is it just because they believe that personal liberty and free markets are the way to go? And that undermining those values with, say, more regulations on free speech or more government involvement in the economy is going to, screw up this nice civilization that we have? In many cases, the answer is yes, absolutely. You might not agree with that conclusion, but it's a political opinion. But I think it is also true that you do have a sizable number of self-proclaimed conservatives who defend the values of classical liberalism simply because it offers a convenient pretext for them to indulge in a rather ugly side of their personality, which is to say a desire to indulge in bigotries or biases against people different from themselves. This sort of thing has always been the dark side of modern conservative politics. Some of the values of classical liberalism that modern conservatives seek to preserve, chief among them freedom of speech and the right to discriminate, are in fact often used for rather nasty purposes by rather nasty people. And when you combine these political goals with this kind of very disrespectful, rebellious personality, you get a really ugly style of politics. And I would say that this is obviously one of the big problems of conservative politics right now.
I think this is also really true. If you look at someone like Curtis Yarvin, like Mencius Moldbug, I think he adopted these like views on race, or was like very comfortable playing with views on race, which I think are very toxic and negative. And the reason is because like Moldbug is the kind of person who sees himself so outside of the norm and the norm of conventional society as being so worthy of opposition that anything that opposes the norms of society must have like some value or be worth pursuing in some way. And so I think a big problem with like the current right wing is one of the ways to attract people to your movement, if your movement exists outside of the norm, is to very clearly stake yourself outside. And so what I mean is that like if you're an actively racist organization, anyone who sees you is going to know that you're outside the bounds of what people typically consider good or polite society. So being actively racist is like putting up a giant beacon in the night and saying, look at me, I oppose the current order. And that means that you can easily like attract people to your movement. Unfortunately, that also means your movement is fundamentally premised on ideals that are destructive to human well-being. And so there's a political tendency to adopt these sort of ideological tenets that are good in the formation, the first creation of a political movement, but are very toxic in the end. And so I think we see that with like right-wing movements starting in like 2016-ish. There's a book on this by Michael Malice called The New Right. And a lot of them adopt these sort of like racist ideals. And I think it was useful in a political sense to adopt those because it increased their movement, but it also destroyed their movement because these ideas are like fundamentally untenable and they cause, internal destruction.
right now. Anyway, I know I'm throwing out a lot of big ideas here. Political philosophy is obviously a very big topic, and it's actually quite a difficult topic to summarize because there's so many different dimensions to it, but I want to hear what you have to say. Why do you think people become conservatives? If you're a conservative yourself, why do you think you wound up that way? Particularly, I want you to talk about your political views as they relate to your personality, not just ideas. Anyway, I look forward to reading those comments, and I will see you all next week. Hey guys, just one other thing I wanted to say before we go. I now have a Twitch.
Okay, cool. I think I should be talking with Hanz pretty soon here. I just cut my finger. I cut it like right in like the most annoying place too. Oh, he did send it. Cool. I'm gonna give him a call.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going? I'm gonna put you on my stream real quick.
Of course, 1 second. Let me put you on mine. Oh.
Okay.
There, there we go. Super sorry about that. Gosh. Good golly. I am. Oh. How do you have like a little thing on your is it like a on your screen for your
Wait, 1 second.
Discord? Oh no.
I have it through. I have like a virtual cam. It allows me to like stream and like communicate with video, and so it just like takes a specific OBS scene and like sends it to Discord, and is like, this is my camera.
That's great. I couldn't figure, for the life of me, I'm really dumb. I couldn't figure that out. So I just ended up buying a second webcam because I couldn't. Because I tried doing like the virtual input thing, and for whatever reason, it didn't like it on my like Discord. I use Streamlabs, and it just didn't. It didn't like transitioning to Discord, and it looked really weird, and I couldn't turn off my camera on my stream without messing with my camera on like any panels or any Discord calls that I were on. So I eventually just like bit the bullet and I was like, I'll buy. It's the same camera. There's just two of them. Like there's one right here and one like right next to it. So
The Mr. Moneybag solution. Just buy another one.
I'll be honest, having a real job is very, very helpful in regards to setting up streaming and stuff. I actually wanted to start streaming in college, but I just my laptop could not take it. And back in college, I wanted to stream games. I was still pretty active, like in politics. Like I volunteered for the Bernie campaign and that kind of thing. But I tried. I remember making my Twitch account, trying to stream, and it crashed immediately, and it never worked. So I started as a book reviewer on YouTube because I could still record and upload. I just couldn't stream. And then I graduated and got an actual job. And after a bunch of money, I now have like a massive 3 monitor setup and a $2,000 PC and like all the stuff. So
you're
I am
super
very
prepared
bougie.
now.
Oh gosh, like I am the most prepared. Oh gosh, it's odd how fast you acclimate, because I went from being a poor college student to doing pretty well for myself. I'm not I just work at like an office kind of like bureaucratic kind of thing. I sold out. I majored in public policy, but I work for a private company. So
It seems to be working out. So
I can't complain. So it's
I will say I have not acclimated yet, because like I started earning a lot more doing like online stuff, and I am like not able to spend money. I just like hoard it, because I like as a kid I grew up like so poor, and I'm just like I cannot like have that happen again. So I just have like I should invest it at the very least, but like I have a hard time like seeing the number go down.
What was it like in terms of your growth? Like mine's been pretty consistent, and it was interesting. Like I actually make like some decent money from this. Like not actually like a ton. I don't particularly like beg for subs. I actually started off like an entirely full charity stream. Like I'm like, guys, don't give me any money. Eventually I was like, I have an editor and stuff to pay. So eventually I was like, fuck it, give me money so I can pay them. But what was it like for your income? Because I saw you have like 100K on Twitter. And so I assume you have a pretty popular adult or other content. So
OnlyFans.
yeah. So what was that like initial like build for you? Like did it start off slow and then like shoot up, or did you like, was it like a steady progression over a period of months or years? And what was that like in terms of income? Do you keep seeing it get like bigger and bigger every month or every week? And what was that like?
Yeah, I would say that like initially I was just sort of posting pictures on the internet and like building my following, and I wasn't super concerned with like the income for a while. I was just, I have like an exhibitionist streak and I enjoyed the attention, and like occasionally I'd get like money, or like there was like this one time where a guy like gave me his credit card and it was like, you and your friend like have a vacation and like buy whatever you want. And that was like cool when you're like young and you're like, oh my god, like I can just do whatever. So there were like perks like that. But
did you do it? Did you go on vacation?
I may or may not have committed credit card fraud. I don't know. Well, yeah, perhaps.
I didn't mean to. I'm not a Fed. I promise. Okay, I'm not gonna.
Okay.
I'm not.
I'll take your word for it. But yeah, it was fun. So we did some things like that. But then I created like a Patreon, and that was good. I was earning maybe like $2,000 a month off of Patreon. And then Patreon banned me because it was like too explicit. And so I moved to OnlyFans. That was a big jump. I started earning a lot more. And it was a pretty like linear process. I mean, like, I think there are jumps, right? Like when you put out a post and it goes like semi-viral, you'll get like a lot more followers. And then I think that like that follower number has like never really gone down. It's just like steadily increased.
Nice.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
really
good.
cool.
Trying streaming now.
I mean, you look like you're doing pretty good. Like you got great. Just cracked 100. Like, and I checked your like thing like earlier this week as I saw your talk with Destiny. I thought you were really cool.
Oh,
and then
nice.
I saw your chat with Econo Boy, and I was like, oh, very cool. I like them both. Econo, I'm more of a like a. I'm pretty good friends with Econo Boy. He's very
good.
cool. Yeah.
I'll ask you a question later. Do you want to play Civ with us?
Oh, okay.
I think he messaged you.
He did. Okay, he wants to play Civ with me because he's terrified of facing me in other battlefields. I'm a card game player. I play Magic the Gathering, Legends of Runeterra, Teamfight Tactics. Those are kind of my games. I've always been really bad at RTSs. I'm not sure why. I love tower defense games, but I hate building games, mostly because I don't have a ton of patience. I remember really trying to love Europa Universalis 4, and I hated it. And also, up until recently, I never had an actual PC to run a lot of these games, or that could run any game aside from, honestly, League of Legends or Teamfight Tactics on my laptop. And by then, my brain's already kind of broken, right? I never played shooters as a kid. I was a Nintendo only household, so I played Pokemon and Fire Emblem and that kind of stuff. But I never
relate.
Yeah.
I'm like terrible at shooters. Whenever someone's like, "You want to play a shooter?" I'm like, I'm going to be like the terrible girl gamer who's like, "How do I move? Like, how do I shoot things?"
It's hard.
Very embarrassing.
I don't understand how people are so good at like point and clicks. I'm just it boggles me. I can't do that. And I have I'd say it's a character flaw. I don't like doing things that I'm not particularly good at. It very much frustrates me. I'm somewhat of a perfectionist, so if I'm not it's not that I'm not immediately good, but if I don't see improvement, I kind of start falling off, or I lose interest. I've tried playing other really good games like say Stardew Valley, or I think I've even tried Civ, and it just felt kind of slow. And also maybe I'm just dumb and I don't understand the mechanics. So I was like, what is going on? But
I will say, as I get older, my like willingness to like learn an entirely new game just like goes down over year after year. It's definitely hard.
I normally live vicariously through like gaming content creators, mostly because I'm really busy. And even the games I like playing, I almost like watching them more because I just don't have the most time. And I have this really terrible habit. I'm sure everyone online does this, where you watch things at like double or triple time speed so you can watch more content. And that's what I do in my private time. It actually is. I've had to retrain myself to listen to things at a normal pace for stream because people were like, "Oh, Hans, it's too fast," and it's 1.5, and I was like, how do you guys do anything?" There was a big meme when I was watching the Vosh's Unironically Evil video, and I turned it up to 16 times speed. I can't process that. My limit for speaking sort of stuff is about 4, and anything past that, I start losing bits and pieces.
4 is impressive, though.
Thank you. I'm very fast. But no, it's the training thing like anything else. I think there actually is some sort of cap, because I started at 1.5 and then 1.7 and then 2 times, and then I got a special Chrome extension so I can keep listening faster. But there was like some kind of block right around 3.5 where I really couldn't go faster unless I was actually really, really, really pushing myself. And at that point, it started being work, and I just never got past it. I can watch say card games or Magic the Gathering at 4+ times speed, especially if there's not a ton of dialogue, because that's really easy and I can still watch everything, and the animations are super slow, so it doesn't really bother me that much. But talking, I have to listen to streamers at different speeds. I can listen to Vosh at about 4 times speed. I can't listen to Destiny at faster than 3 times speed. He's just...
I was going to say, it depends on the person. Because, like, I know there are certain YouTube channels where, like, I will consistently listen to them on 3 times speed. And I've got the same Chrome extension, like Video Speed Controller or something. But, like, there are other channels where I just don't do that with. And I think I've watched, like, Booksmart streams before where he's, like, going over, like, a 2-hour debate. And he desperately wants to put it on, like, 2 times speed. But he knows that if he does, the people watching, like, afterwards, the VODs, are going to have it on 2 times speed. And it's going to be, like, alternating between, like, 4 times and 1 times speed, which is, like, impossible. So I can just see, like, his brain, like, slowly dying as he has to listen to this, like, 2-hour, 3-hour Twitch debate where people are just, like, going in circles at 1 times speed.
I've trained my chat.
Poor man.
At this point, I've slowly, just steadily started increasing it by like 0.1 at a time. So now I can make them watch it at 1.3 times speed. Unless it's Destiny, they don't notice. Like, Twitch chatters are very dumb. I see you, chat. I hate you. But like in particular, just
you're just boiling the frog little by little.
Yes, they don't notice, and I'm hoping to keep training them up. And for the VOD people, I don't really post a lot of React content to my YouTube. Most of my like YouTube stuff is either like debates. So it's easier for that because I don't have to care about that. So if I'm just if someone wants to watch all my Twitch VODs, they're welcome to, but I'm not gonna hurt myself that badly and listen to, gosh, some people at 1 time speed is impossible. I can't do that. I actually got in a fight with my, sorry, go ahead.
I was just agreeing. I said yeah quietly.
Sorry, I have a tendency to ramble, so if you ever want to jump in, please stop me, because okay. I'm really bad at regulating myself like that. So I don't really watch the other person's like lips to move, and I'm like, oh shit, they're trying to say something. I should probably stop.
You're all good though. Continue.
Yeah. So aside from speed, so do you like Civ? What kind of games do you play?
I've played a lot of Civ. So this is like where the challenge started, because I was like,
okay,
I play Civ. Akano boy, he claims he's an incredible Civ player. We'll see. I want to test his mettle in battle, and ideally, I'd have other people to do that with me. We like talked about also a way to like handicap ourselves. So like the idea would be like we let new players have like 5 turns, right? Where they can just like learn the ropes. We can like walk them through it, and we're not allowed to like start until they've had like 5 turns. And Civ is the game where like you get like little advantages and you like snowball. So we're thinking that like if we give people like those little advantages, they'll like snowball into a similar advantage. Probably not as big as like the skill difference, but like it'll make it easier.
Right. I might take you up on that then.
You should.
I was very nervous. I don't want to give Akano Boy bragging rights over me. All right. I've destroyed him in many a debate about media. He's run away screaming. So he always talks a lot of shit in DMs. I love. He's a little stinker. Okay. Like he's such a nice, polite guy. I've never seen someone be able to debate so many people so calmly when they say insane things.
So calm. It's impressive.
Yeah,
and I don't have the econ background to like necessarily fact check him, but I'll see like in the debates where he has, and people are just like, you know, they're throwing like absolute nonsense at him, and he's just like, well, I don't know about that, but there is a study, and it's like, good on you, buddy. You're trying your best.
I can't do that. I get I'm not sure how much you've heard about me. I have a tendency to get angry pretty quickly when I see people saying dumb things, and I can't stop myself. I contain myself for too long, and eventually I just kind of snapped, and I was like, all right, you're stupid, you're a dumb fuck, everyone's bad, like no one understands anything. I just can't. So it was a progression in regards to me. People call it my Joker arc. I'm not sure when that started or stopped, and now I alternate between being what I am right now and
Nice, charitable.
I'm being so nice and charitable right now. No, I haven't. Okay, I maintain this regardless. Okay, if someone's nice to me and they've given me zero reason to come after them, I do not come after them in any way, shape, or form. If I disagree with somebody, it's normally pretty mild. I'm like, oh hey, like I think you're wrong here, king or queen or whatever, and
Monarch.
Monarch. That makes more sense. I was always thinking of like a gender neutral thing for that, and Monarch sounds. It doesn't have the same.
Ruler, emperor. I don't know.
It doesn't have the same flow because it's not. It's not a single syllable, right? It's
yeah.
Because no one's like
Not
so
punchy.
true monarch. Yeah, it's not.
Czar.
Ooh. No, because then there's Czarist. It's still gendered.
Yeah,
like,
it's
the
true.
Languages are broken. That's not fair. We can't. But I'm not Vegeta. Chat, leave me alone. I'm considerably taller than that. But it's Sorry. You said you wanted to talk about Twitch stuff, and I feel like I'm rambling.
We're talking about Twitch stuff. It's good. I mean, so you've been on the platform for a little while. You've had some interesting debates. I think that I'm like not a good debater necessarily, but I'm also in the kind of position where I'm very comfortable arguing with people, and I won't hold any like ill will to people if we argue. But I think that's very unusual. Where like most people seem to, even if they'll say like, oh, it's cool, they will hold like a bit of a grudge. And I've definitely had like issues in the past with like friendships where like I'm very comfortable debating whatever philosophical topic there is, but like other people hold that shit like serious to their heart, and it'll like upset them. So I just know like to like not debate people unless I know that they happen to be like the same type of person as me.
Right. There's two types. There's one type of thing that I'm okay with, and there's one type of thing that I'm really not. I love actual just like debates, and if debates get aggressive, I don't particularly care. What's frustrating is, say, like after the debate, if they start doing other stuff like weird personal things. Like if someone says my ideas are bad, that's fine. And we have an extremely heated conversation. I don't particularly care because I've had those kind of talks, and like next morning I'm like, oh, like what's up, buddy? Like we're still fine. But I think a lot of people, you said like they can't do that, and I've strained things with some like friends as well, where I'm like, fuck, like I want to disagree with you, but I know if we do, it's gonna be a whole thing, and you're gonna get mad at me, and I don't hate you, but like, don't make me do this. And I thought like online would be more different and more people would be okay, but no, people very much intrinsically latch onto their positions. And if they feel like a lot of times, goes for everybody, where a lot of people think their positions are the only moral position or the most moral position. So if you attack their position, you're not just calling them dumb, but like you are doing that as well because they're wrong apparently, but you're also calling them a bad person. And so a lot of people really don't respond well to that. And I would say I've also been, and I'm not immune to that. I've had people say that just because I have a certain take that I'm a bad person, or like say I'm transphobic, or like da 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 da, and it is very frustrating because I'm like, and then people say, oh, you shouldn't care, or you shouldn't worry about it. But a lot of times, when I disagree with someone over video games, or say what movies are best, or stuff like that, that's just fun. That's vibes. I don't really care about that. But normally, when you disagree with someone about politics, a lot of times the insinuation is that the other person is a bad person because they're holding the bad politics. So there can only be one right or position. Very rarely does it come across as I'm okay with either things. It was like I remember having a really strange debate with a Big Papa Fascist about he's super far right, like nationalist kind of guy, and we were talking about how to solve Social Security and how do we make sure that we continue that program. And how do we keep, say, America from getting too old, right? And he was like, oh, we have to raise birth rates and like da 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 da. And I told him like, I'm not particularly opposed to say, like family incentivization. Like that's totally fine. If we want to like say expand the child tax credit or something like that, that sounds awesome. But I don't know why he in particular was so aggressively against immigration as another form of solving that. Because for me, I don't particularly care from which avenue we solve a problem if I'm okay with each solution, and I'm okay with both of those things. And so oftentimes I find it odd. So and I've learned this more recently. To be fair, I was a lot more aggressive in college. I'm 24 now, so I graduated in 2020, and I was I volunteered for Bernie. I love Bernie. I still love Bernie. I volunteered a lot of time and energy for that. I was what you call those like populist lefties. I would like listen to Kyle Kalinske and Crystal and Sagar and stuff like that. And oh God! And I was, I was a farm boy from the Midwest. And I was like, yeah, economic issues are the most important things. We don't need like social issues, or we can fight about that later. Like just like a moderate person with progressive economic positions is like the way to go. And then I watched Bernie get fucked twice, so I don't. It made me reevaluate a lot of things. And also, I did a good reading, and I met some people who I thought were pretty smart and started pilling me on different things. So
yeah, and I mean, just in regards to like the discussion of politics and how heated it can get, I think it's so easy to just fire off like a single snide comment. And sometimes that snide comment can be like totally justified. Like if the person's been like totally rude to you the entire conversation and they've been like attacking you, and you just give them like a little taste of their own medicine, right? It might like feel fair that you're doing that, but like I've done this before and just felt like so bad about it because I know that the other person's gonna like take it so much more seriously. And I could have just like, like swallowed my frustration and been like, okay, I disagree. This is ridiculous for these reasons, but I'm not going to like humiliate you over it. And then things would have been better. And so I think so much of like mature discourse is just being able to like swallow that sense of like perhaps righteous indignation and just be like, they're being shitty, but I'm not going to be shitty back.
Oof, I am the wrong we can debate about this. I'm the wrong person to I think at some point I really just stopped caring about saving the feelings of people who I think are being like crossing lines with me. And I've gotten a good amount of pushback where people say, oh, hey, you responded too aggressively, or you were too mean to people who were being shitty to you. And I completely understand. And I've, in terms of how I felt about some things I've said to some people, I've admitted that I've gone too far in regards to hurting people's feelings for things that they've said or things that they've done to me. But I've always been in big favor of, at least in this case, like social retribution in terms of someone's talking a bunch of shit about you and you say something back. I don't think you're a bad person. For me, I am a big fan of reciprocity, not in legal systems. I'm much more, say, rehabilitative in that case. But I don't like the current incentive structure of we should expect people who are getting, say, attacked or bullied or whatever, and we should expect them to be bigger people. Especially when the online system kind of feeds on those sorts of attacks. So, because it feels like a lot of times, if you stand up for yourself, people will say that you're angry or that you're mad or like da-da-da-da-da. But if you don't, unless you're willing to completely just roll over, people will just keep walking on you. And I really dislike that. And I think there's ways of doing it. I've been definitely too aggressive in the past. I went on a really long aggressive tear over New Year's and Christmas. And I'm recently trying to be a little bit more measured in my responses. But I have no issue in swallowing it so you don't hurt their feelings. For me, a lot of times, and this, feel free to like dig into me for this. Once someone crosses a certain threshold with me, I have certain standards that I won't cross. Like I'm not a big fan of misgendering people. I don't like slurs. But once someone crosses a line with me, I'm fine saying pretty much any number of things about like their personality, their intelligence, that kind of thing. I'm totally fine going after them like that. So
I think we have like a sort of different experience with this. And I'll say that my experience is I've been on the internet for a long time. I've had points in time where people were like routinely harassing me for things and really engaging in that bullying behavior. And what I found was that I could get in the trenches and I could like argue with them and insult them and demean them. And I think that I'm like fairly good at this, like to my credit a little bit. I think I can come up with some like clever and like mean, shitty things to say to people. But what I found was that the more I did that, the more I actually incentivized the behavior. And I think the people, what they were looking for was a response. They would needle me and needle me and needle me. And they were wanting me to like show some pain, show that it like frustrated me in some way. And when I responded to them, when I got angry or like, you know, told them off or whatever, I was like showing that they were like hurting me. And so I found that like, if I want to disincentivize a bad behavior, the best thing that I can do is not make that bad behavior rewarding for them, not give them, you know, that assurance or that satisfaction of knowing that they've actually hurt me. And so just like ignoring it. I do think that like there are people online, especially in Twitch, where like if you give them like a real nice hook, a zinger of a comeback, that looks good, that like gets you engagement, and people will like feel that with you. They'll be like, fuck yeah, that person like deserved to, you know, get someone giving them a taste of their own medicine. I think there's like people who appreciate that and that kind of style. Like Destiny is someone who's like really good at this, where like, you know, in the old like Skeptosphere debate videos, he would get in these like dog piles and he would just like fight these people, and it worked, right? I'm not that kind of person who's like okay or like wanting to get in those dog piles. And so I think it sort of is like person by person. Different rhetorical strategies work for different people. But for me, I've always found that, you know, just like being the bigger person or like swallowing that indignant pride, it's not a matter of like doing what's right necessarily, though I think it like might be. But like more importantly, I just think it's like effective for creating the kind of online space that I personally want to inhabit.
No, you're right, and that's part of why I've moderated myself in like the last couple of weeks, mostly because I can't fight every battle, right? I'm one of those people that's very comfortable rolling in the mud. I actually kind of enjoy that.
Okay.
It gives me energy. It's like the righteous fury. It's just like every time, like when I'm at the gym or anything like that, it just feels so good. But I know that you're right. Also, I would say like a problem with me, or something that I struggle with, is I am a pretty emotional guy. There are certain things about me that really do bother me, and I make those pretty clear in regards to what does or doesn't affect me. And so I can't really hide that. I'm comfortable hitting back, and if I think someone isn't worth responding to, I normally won't. So like if it's say like a random nobody who I don't follow them, they don't follow me, they just like say like one of like the stock like 4 things that people say like to like discredit me or hurt me, I don't just like block that person, right? But if I think someone either has like an actual critique or something, or they're say another content creator, if it's content creator, I'd only meme it up so I can like maybe get in a fight with them, because I enjoy fighting with people. And if there's someone who just seems like a person who has an actual criticism of me, I'll ask if they want to talk. So that's kind of I do like the fights though. I like getting in dog piles. The problem is that a lot of times the two like dog piles that you get to choose from, right? You can either go into say uber conservative spaces and constantly like scream at people. I'm really excited for that. I want to do that more. And I'm really excited. My friend CTV, he's a critically thinking veteran. He holds like a big panel, and I'm hoping to get on that. I struggle to do a lot of panels now. I'm blacklisted from a couple, but also I have a really.
How did you get blacklisted?
Oh gosh, let's just say I have some gripes and some currently unresolvable personal differences with Dylan Burns.
Okay.
And so I'm not really I was on the hippy dippy a couple times, but I'm not anymore.
I see.
Yeah.
Drama, apparently.
Of course. And so that, and then in regards to say Prime Kai's, love Prime. He's a pretty good guy. I actually got my start mostly there. I started like on his after panels and stuff, and so he's always been really nice to me in regards for that. But I'm a working person, and I have to get up at like 6:30 for work. So all these fucking Twitch events start at 8 or 9, or they go till midnight, and I can't run on 6 hours of sleep. My body I literally start having like heart palpitations if I like don't get enough sleep. My body will start falling apart, and so I haven't really been able to participate in a lot of these. And it's very sad because I really like fighting with people. And so most of my more recent debates have been people I've like strung in from Twitter who are saying dumb shit, as opposed to any panel space. But also, in regards to panels, I like how they're. I like certain things about. I used to run panels as well. I'm a big fan of, say, having less people on panels. I think eight is. I think eight is legitimately too many.
Probably.
I had a pretty solid formula where it was six. And more people got to talk. It was more pointed. I think four can be good, but you really just like want to avoid, say, like two people constantly dominating a conversation. So you have to be careful about like what personalities you bring on, because some people just like I have a tendency to talk a lot. So if I say bring on me with like say three quiet people, then it's just going to be me talking the entire time, and I feel bad about that. But it's hard to regulate myself in the moment when I do those sorts of things. But overall, I enjoy panels because it gives you more people like to fight with and disagree with. Because most of the time, I think individual people, unless they're really like ramped up or something, it can be very, very reasonable. So sometimes, unless you know it's going to be like a really heavy or drama-y conversation, most of them are pretty chill. So, but
yeah, that seems true. It seems like actual disagreement is sort of like hard to get into because people don't necessarily want to get into it all the time. And when they do, it can be a little bit disastrous. The last time that I heard about you was like with the Demon Mama drama. And
oh, shit.
the debate you got into her with schooling, I think.
So you have heard of me?
Yeah, I've heard of you. Yeah, a little bit. I don't know. I don't think I watched the whole debate. I might have just seen like clips of it, but yeah, tell me about that.
Didn't even do your Oppo research. Oh my gosh. Like I no, it's so this is probably the beginning of like the cracks that formed. So up until that point, I was really I was pretty much universally beloved. I ran people considered the best moderated panels on Twitch. I was everyone's like favorite big beefy like friendly lefty guy. I'm still like lefty. My positions really haven't changed. It's just my demeanor towards certain people has. And I remember having a conversation because I saw her say something about like school being oppressive and like violence against children like on Twitter, and I was like, this is fucking dumb. All right. And we agreed to have a conversation, and I essentially did a 2-day gauntlet where I overall, like in totality, I did about 8 hours of debates against numerous anarchists who kept telling me that sending children to school, it was some flavor of oppressive coercion, and society would be infinitely better if we just let children choose of their own free will to do whatever they want, and enough of them will magically pick school to keep society from collapsing. And so I took exception with that, and so I did some of those debates. I debated Demon Mama. I think I did relatively well, but there were some cracks. A lot of people started insinuating that I was somehow transphobic for debate, like being too aggressive towards her, which
So
is
what
really
happens
weird.
when you debate a trans woman?
I know
You're
like,
gonna get
okay.
accused of it.
It happens, and then what happened? What was worse? I had a much more aggressive debate against Riverboat Jack, another trans woman, about the same thing during the second day of the gauntlet. And then I had a third day of the gauntlet where Joe Lewis, another streamer, he's a nice guy, but he accused me of being like anti-woman. They're like, you're developing a body count because you're being aggressive towards women in debates. And so I did like another 3-hour like debate session against him where he's like, you're like, and so now there's a meme in my community that I'm anti-fem because I'm aggressive towards women. And it's like, I'm just aggressive towards everybody. I don't, and it's hard to prove that, right? Because it was like, I can say like, oh, here are my old debates where like, I'm not proud of some things that I've said to people. Like I've been really mean to like other men, right? Like I normally like really try and stay away from mutable characteristics. But I remember one time where I was like so belligerent on a hippy dippy recruitment panel back when I was much smaller. There was this conservative that was really needling me, and I remember like calling him fat, and I was like, I haven't done that since like high school.
Middle school level insult.
I know. I was like, what the fuck? I shocked myself. I was a little tipsy at that point too.
Okay.
But it doesn't excuse it. And so I always found it extremely frustrating when people would sort of insinuate that I'm transphobic or that I'm anti-woman because I would be aggressive towards them in debates. And because I'm aggressive towards everybody in debates. And like if someone just says I'm an aggressive asshole during debates, that's fine with me. Like I'm fine like holding that, but I really don't like when someone like tries to paint me as something that I'm not. Like I don't particularly know what to do, right? Because I remember having a debate about this the other day, or where the guy was like, you were mean to this woman and this one. I'm like, all right, that's two. I've had, say, a dozen plus debates, and a lot of them were with men, and I was really mean to them too. Like, I'm not sure how I can demonstrate to you that, because it's impossible, right?
I
Like,
mean, here's the thing, Hans. The thing that I've learned in internet discourse and being public on the internet for years and years is that it doesn't actually matter what's true. When someone makes an accusation about you on the internet, says you're some shitty transphobe or woman hater or femme destroyer, whatever, if the person reading that likes you, they're going to be like, no, it's not. If the person dislikes you, they're going to believe it. And it doesn't matter what's actually true, unfortunately. But this is how like most internet reputations are like built and destroyed on. It's just like people will say things based on like tenuous evidence, and people who disagree with them will, you know, believe it as gospel. So I think you've got to like not worry too much about it, because at the end of the day, people who dislike you are going to find whatever reason to dislike you, even if it doesn't make sense. And people who like you are going to stick by you.
I understand that. A lot of it is like again, like I'm an emotional guy. I consider myself like a pretty progressive person, right? And it really does hurt my like. There's two things. Like obviously, like from a professional sense, I really don't like being like labeled a transphobe. It bothers me, or like say anti-woman. That really bothers me. But also from a personal level, I know what like I care about and what I support and like the principles that I stick by. And again, maybe I'm too soft, right? I'm a big baby in regards to that, where I just some of it does get to me, and I've gotten better about, I think, dealing with it. And I think you're right in that I've at some points I really don't care, which is why I've become more aggressive, because I really don't care what like certain people think. But maybe it'd be like healthier in regards to like responding to some of this stuff, that if I don't care what people think, I shouldn't be so aggressive. I should just leave, like not talk about them, or like not do that. You're probably right there in regards to the optimal thing for surviving online. But one's more fun for me. It's just I've made many bad decisions for the sake of fun. And also I do yeah.
I mean, I think if you're having a good time, you're having a good time.
Yeah. I've always really, even like with all the terrible things that have happened, this is still super fun. I don't think I'm ever going to do this full time, mostly because people are finicky. All right, I don't want to stake my livelihood and my financial security on how people feel about me online, especially in something as tenuous as politics. Unless I say like really struck it big and I was like making so much money that it wouldn't even matter if I got canceled after a year or two. But I really like the ability that I can stream on my own time and cover what I want to cover and like not have to worry about that. But there's just, after my experiences, it just really makes me happy that I have this massive cushion to protect myself from outside. Because this is my favorite hobby, right? I do this more than I do anything else aside from my actual job. But it's nice to have some level of separation.
Yeah, totally. Can you give me 1 second here? I'm just fixing something on my stream real quick.
No, of course. Take as many as you need. Oh no. Are you I still see you. Yeah, I think your stream is live.
My stream is live.
You dropping frames or?
It's my chat. My chat is like stuck. I don't know why.
Oh.
Restream chat broken.
Ooh. I'm sorry. I don't really pay a lot of attention to my streaming setup. I'm very bare bones with it, mostly because I really don't understand it. And that's part of why I got Streamlabs in the first place, because OBS seemed too complicated for me. So I've been... Thanks, CTV. I know I'm dumb. I really appreciate it, all right? I am highly educated. But it's just...
The chat is fixed. Of course, people are immediately shitting it up with garbage comments, as per usual. But
ooh, take as long as you need. Hey, I meant it, okay? Leave her alone. It's not very nice. I mean, your chat's is like as mean to you as my chat is to me.
You think so?
Like, I bully my chat a lot. They really deserve it. Okay,
Yeah.
my chat is.
Chats deserve it.
I've said this, okay, and I maintain this. Part of why Twitch and online politics in general is such a hellscape is because these little demons in chat, they don't want actual politics. There are 200 people who care about actual IRL politics, and they all watch I'm Really Important, and I love him, and I really appreciate them. But the rest of these people are just fucking little drama frogs who want to see like people they like destroy other people that they don't like. And I get it. I understand the game. It's fun for me, but a lot of people, there's always like this discourse where it's like, we have to cover things that really matter. And like, yeah, we can, and sometimes we do, but let's not pretend that this is anything but what it is, which is just, reality TV for, politically confused people online. So.
I know it's like total anathema to say, but Twitch is just like a soap opera, and the politics is just like a fun soap opera with rotating characters.
Oh yeah, I am.
And people like to LARP is like so important, but like you're debating people on the internet. No one's listening to you. Or if they're listening to you, it's like, because they like Twitter shit posting.
Yeah. I used to be one of those people. Okay. I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed person. I just graduated college. I was good. Like I said, I was selling my soul to the corporate masters. And I was like, I want to still do something, right? I want to make a change and like still like be a positive influence in the world politically. And so I started online. I'm like, oh man, I really do care about this. I want things to go well, and like I want to live my principles, and I still do. But I was like, I'm gonna do research streams, and I'm gonna cover this, and like I'll do these things, and nothing. Crickets, right? There was like this big part where I remember like it was like in the middle of like the summer. Around the election, like with BLM, and that was earlier. Sorry, it's like in the summer of 2021. Okay. I remember doing this big research stream where I essentially read the George Floyd bill in its entirety on my stream.
Sounds so boring. Holy shit!
It was so boring. Everyone asked for it. They're like, "You should cover this, dude. It's really, really cool." And I'm like. And I read it, I'm like, y'all don't give a fuck. No one gives a fuck, all right? Like, and at that point, I started seeing the cracks. And then the Hassan's house, were you there for, like, the Hassan's house memes?
I followed it vaguely.
Yeah, that also kind of broke me in a way, where I saw a lot of people who I genuinely respected. And they really seemed to come out. And let me clarify this, caveat this. At that point in time, no one knew that Hassan actually was like planning something to raise like hundreds of thousands of dollars for like American labor, like unions. So I've like rescinded like my negative comments from that time. But a lot of the arguments that I saw from people who I thought like also really cared about politics, and particularly like lefties, was that we are under no obligation to live our principles, and that is anathema to me. It physically hurts me when I see people, because this is supposed to be either our job or like in my case my favorite hobby, and we don't care about anything that we're doing. And it just broke me inside, because I was watching people say, oh, no one is obligated to live their values even when they're in a moral, like in the position of power to do it, right? And it's
Peter
one
Singer
thing,
is just crying as he reads this.
Yes, I am. I was like, oh gosh, I was so I burned the bridge with Vosh over this. It was really bad. Because I remember him debating Irrelevant on this, and I can't fathom an ideology where we don't at least encourage the most powerful members among us to try and make the world a better place, or at least make it look closer to what our vision is. It's one thing if you're, say, a random like 16-year-old shit poster on Twitter and you're not fucking doing anything because you don't have any like power or like influence or anything like that. I mean, you can still say like volunteer, which is like would be cool. But watching a person after person after person say that we have to do nothing in like pursuit of like say making the world better, because that's supposedly why we're lefties and why we're good people. It legitimately broke me. And after that, I was like, fuck it, like. No one cares. No one cares about living our values. No one cares about the principles. The best thing you can do is try like to breed a community where people actually sort of kind of care, and then just have fun with it. And that's kind of like been my philosophy since then. Like it was around that time, and also around the Demon Mama time, where I started accepting money, where I was like, fuck, like if no one actually cares, and I've been like needlessly rejecting donations and going in the hole because I still paid my editor at that time, right? For content. Then at that point, I was like, fuck it, might as well not be, several $100s in debt, in the hole a month to create content that apparently no one actually gives a shit about in terms of like making the world a better place. So, and once I figured that, and I came into like the big idea that this is all just a soap opera, it became a lot more fun. And also I became a lot more angry and mean because I was like, fuck it, like we're not allies making the world a better place politically. We're just a bunch of characters on a fucking TV show, and like everyone's shitting on everybody. And as long as you can try and be like a somewhat decent person and be consistent with your positions and criticize people who, like, regardless of who they are, then you're better than 99% of streamers. So like at that point, that's like been my philosophy at this point. So there's been a schedule and say gradual like decline in my my faith in the space and my faith in online politics in general. Also, I keep watching online figures who are trying to do active like IRL politics get absolutely fucking schlacked. Like I don't know how many. Like, I don't care. It doesn't seem like how many retweets you get. We keep losing primaries to more conservative Democrats, and that really fucking bothers me. So,
yeah, I'm trying to set up a debate with Destiny about democracy, and
Ooh.
I really want to talk to him about some of his experiences with getting involved in the political process because I think they're pretty illuminating.
Wait, sorry, say that again. I saw something. I was just like looking at your chat, and someone said something about Destiny getting like trying to do IRL politics and getting fucked. That was another like blackpilling moment. But you said you wanted to debate him about democracy. Like what
Democracy.
in particular?
Oh, whether or not like it works as a political system.
Ooh.
And I would consider myself like a skeptic of democracy, and
we could do like maybe have a little conversation about that
yeah,
now.
sure.
Yeah. My first question. So I really know like where we're coming at this from. Do you have, say, an alternative? Because that's a big thing that I normally have. This is my biggest issue, I would say, with anarchists, is that a lot of times they can make, say, criticisms of a system, and sometimes I'll agree with those criticisms, right? Say, like, maybe, like, school is too, like, regimented in terms of, like, how it treats children. It doesn't give us enough, say, opportunities or, like, different ways for people to learn. But when I ask for, like, their solution, it's fucking bonkers. So I would probably agree with a lot of your critiques of democracy, but I want to ask what your replacement is before I say, oh, hey, and say, yeah, democracy's kind of bad. And it turns out you want some kind of dictatorship. So sorry, just...
Yeah. I mean... So my critique of democracy is fundamentally that I don't believe that it exists. So when I say like I don't believe in democracy, what I really am saying is that like when we have a democratic system in the United States, we have this sort of like pretension. We're pretending that like the general population is passing policy or like, the opinions of the population are getting filtered into policy. And I don't think that's actually what's happening. So I have something which I call the iron law of oligarchy. What I mean is that like in any political system, there's going to be a small group of people who are highly motivated, dedicated, have the resources and the influence to influence politics to a great degree. And there are numerous examples of this, but basically it means that a small group of people in any political system is always going to be the movers and shakers who are really making the decisions about what gets implemented. Or they're going to be the ones who are making sure that their supporters are getting out to vote, people who agree with them are getting out to vote, and so on. And so I think we have to recognize that all systems are basically oligarchic in this way. And then it's about managing, who is going to be in that class making the decisions and influencing politics and who is not going to be allowed in that class.
Okay. So I can definitely agree with you that it seems relatively impossible to have a fully diffused society in terms of power or influence. That seems absolutely bonkers. Even in, say, the most fantastical commune, there's always going to be people that are more motivated to like go to meetings and set things up, and
or have closer social relationships with people, and therefore more.
Yeah,
and so on. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I consider myself one of those the hyper workers who like is constantly doing stuff because I get crazy if I can't do something. So I completely understand like where you're coming from with that. I guess there are certain benefits of at the very least calling it a democracy in regards to how
Maybe.
oligarchy functions. And one of them I would say is that feeling as if you have a say in society, even if you really don't, right? Because like say every Republican in a solid blue state and every Democrat in a solid red state, they don't fucking matter in terms of the presidential election. Like they matter in terms of the House and stuff. But like in the case of say like the most powerful like member of the executive branch, they really don't do anything. And so, but sometimes they feel like they still matter, and there are places where it can affect them. And so having that, I think you have to have a very strong reason to take that away. And I've seen some stuff in regards to, say, China, where they're relatively happy with their government because their government can keep producing increasing living standards, right? But I would say it's possible to have quite high living standards while also having, say, high individual personal freedom and the ability to partake in society and government. And I think sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree with you, absolutely. And I think a big part of this is like the ability to, if you so will, or have the capability to enter into the class of people that is actually really influencing politics. That kind of meritocratic system is really important. And so like, you know, the problem with like aristocracy and like monarchies of the past, I think is really, it's problematic when the aristocracy becomes closed to new members. And what you see is like guilds become very strong, merchants who are very highly competent in their fields amass a great deal of power. And when you have, you know, these separate institutions outside the government amassing more power, that indicates, you know, there's going to be a shift in the winds of power, right? The guilds are going to, you know, maybe take over the government, or they're going to align with like a revolutionary group and they're going to overthrow the monarch and so on. And so the closed aristocracy is like really not a good thing. But I love you, Hanz, because like you're so honest when you talk about democracy. Like you say that like, you know, it may be oligarchic, but ultimately it's good that we have this like conception of it being democratic because people like that. And like really what I think is it's this like religious myth that we tell ourselves, and it helps people get by and maybe feel included and feel like they're willing to like put in the effort to do things. So I think that's like a very honest view of democracy that you have.
Well, because I've worked in policy a little bit, right? I studied it, and I was an intern for a political economist during college. And I still have a lot of friends who say work in public health, that they work in government institutions. And so I see a lot of the sides of how government functions. And a lot of it is a small group of, I would say, very dedicated people who are consistently talking about how they want to improve society. Like I have a friend, she's one of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life. And she works in health policy. And she busted her ass for a year for a provision of the Build Back Better bill that didn't even pass. Mm-hmm. So we have like these people who put in so much time and effort to actually say improve society or keep it running and stuff. And most of us are just kind of vibing. And most people don't seem to want to participate that much. Mm-hmm. I guess like I think there's a small misconception for a lot of people where more people want to participate in democracy, they just don't want to. I think we should absolutely make it easier to participate in democracy, but I think we should also probably respect that it seems like most people voting like once every couple of years is kind of their limit. They don't seem to want to do anymore. And I'm not going to force somebody to do it. I am in favor of, say, like incentives, like maybe either having maybe like a small tax break if you vote, or or that kind of thing. I think that's entirely good in terms of encouraging people to participate. But if someone really, 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 really doesn't want to, I wouldn't say throw them in prison. And I think that's a big problem, is that for a ton of people, especially say like hyper political hobbyists, is that most people, they have other hobbies, because politics is our hobby. It's like, you know, it's our version of sports. Like when my
they just want to delegate it to someone else.
Yeah. And it's so frustrating. And most people in regards to like the meritocracy, I am a huge fan of meritocracies. It's why I love weightlifting a lot. Because like it doesn't matter like who you know or where you came from. It matters how much you can lift, and I really really appreciate that. And it's very very honest. I mean, like aside from like steroid stuff, and I'm totally fine with people who use steroids. I personally don't. Just like a health decision. But it's very, very open to like, what are your actual numbers? What are your competition numbers? What are your gym numbers? Like, are there videos of you doing these acts? Like, you know, and I think I really, really appreciate that. And I've, if I thought it was stable, and people wouldn't be extremely disincentivized, I'd be a lot more okay with a much more ironclad meritocracy. Because I've personally been the benefit of a lot of meritocratic benefits. I got scholarship. I grew up on a farm, right, in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Indiana. I got a scholarship to go to a private high school that catapulted me through life. I got almost a full ride scholarship to college, and from that college, I got an amazing like job that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. With a boss that like really appreciates me and understands me and wants me to be better. And I've been promoted at the company that I've worked at. I even had to like move companies. I've been promoted twice. They ship me across the country to different like offices, depending on like where they need me. And I've had nothing but an amazing experience in regards to like my working life. And a lot of it is because, you know, a lot of it because my parents took care of me and they tried to incentivize me like to learn, but a lot of it is just me fucking grinding. And I really appreciate the grind set. From a personal distaste perspective, nothing bothers me more than someone with a ton of resources or talent or potential who squanders it. That bothers me so much when I watch someone who's so gifted or it's the same thing with like the Hassan's house meme, where if you have all this power and you don't use it to make like to not even like do good, but like enact your vision on the world, what are you doing with it? Like it sounds really shitty. It's like the power is meant to be wielded meme. Like, yes, but like for good reasons, but still do it. And so yeah, sorry, I'm talking a lot. I want to ask you a question. Have you ever read The Narrow Corridor?
I haven't.
It's a really, really fun look at governance and sociology, where it essentially it takes a somewhat Hobbesian view of like the Leviathan in the state, and how there's a push and pull between society and government. And a society that is strong, like say there are strong family institutions and strong outside government like policies, whether they're tribal, they sort of fall apart, and there's a really absent figure, and society is very unregulated and almost lawless, and it's very hard to build a lot of things out of that society. And then in other cases, you have, say, a corrupt sort of government or a weak populace, and that it's decadent and bureaucratic in a way that is unhelpful. Because I love bureaucracy as much as the next guy. I'm a paper pusher.
If it's useful.
Yeah. And that's fine. But if it gets so much that people aren't really benefiting from the bureaucracy anymore, then it needs to be trimmed. And so the end goal was that there's this strong, if you have a strong society that can interact with government, and a strong government that can interact with society in like a positive way, everyone is better off. So when you said that like there's an issue with like the merchant guilds getting too powerful compared to the aristocracy, I actually like the idea of like a push and pull in society. I think there's obviously like better people and worse people, but I think we've demonstrated pretty well the concept of like how echo chambers form, that without somebody to pull back against the more crazy people, people just go off on fucking insane like tangents and hills.
Yeah, and what I would say in regards to like the merchant guilds is I agree. Like it's really important for people to have like a diverse array of areas where they can be highly successful. I would say it's problematic when people can be very successful and have a lot to offer, but be barred from having any political voice. And so I think that's what you see in these sort of like aristocratic societies, where they'll be like, well, you have to have the blood. You have to be part of this bloodline to make any decisions. And yes, you're incredibly competent. You can make great decisions. You could be a leader, but no, you can't be in this. And that's when you see like, you know, the enormous growth of power in like private sectors that eventually cannibalizes like the old regime because it wasn't able to survive on its, you know, closed hierarchy of like bloodlines. And so I think like the ability to like integrate people and have people move from sector to sector, depending on where they can really, you know, deliver on what they're competent at, that sort of movement is important. But I mean, I think you brought up this idea of like weightlifting and how much you enjoy that because it's like this grind and because you can see yourself improving, and that like striving for greatness I think is fantastic, but also the ability to like see other people striving for greatness and to like very clearly see like, okay, well, I'm benching 200 pounds, this other person's benching 300 pounds. Wow, they're amazing, they're so much better than me, but like that's inspiring and I want to get to that and I can respect them. And I think that's important, like to recognize that like between men always have like inequalities in capability to do things, and that's okay, and that's like something to be celebrated.
No, I agree. I think it's a lot of that's mindset, and I actually really appreciate this. I like I said, I moved here to my new promotion. I live in Virginia now, and I'm not CA, I promise. But a big thing is that the new gym I'm at, it is extremely competitive. There are guys there that make me look like a stick, and these people are extraordinarily strong. And I'm one of the bigger guys. If I could flex for a second, it's like I'm about 6'3". I've power lifted for relatively consistently for about 3 or 4 years. And I'm about 240, 250 kind of pounds. And there are guys there that dwarf me. They are monster trucks. I've never seen so many strong people in the same place. And it's so fucking motivating. Like you said, but I feel like that's almost a learned mindset where there's like almost like two types of people, where you watch other people do amazing things and you want to emulate them and compete with them and beat them. And then other people see other people that are better than them and they just give up. And they're like, I can't do that. And it disincentivizes people from doing anything. Like it really feels like it almost like it fosters this sort of mindset of if you're not already the best at something, then you can't succeed in it. And I've never understood that. That always really bothered me. And I've really kind of selected my friends based on people who uplift and motivate me. And I struggle to, I have some really good friends who aren't quite like that, but we vibe for other reasons. And a lot of times I find myself at odds with them because I'll be like, time to fucking grind, son, and they don't want to. And
one thing that sort of frustrates me with like left-wing politics is I see there's this culture of like victimhood along a lot of left-wing circles where they see people succeeding. And the impulse is like very much, to look for reasons why they've been like fucked over and look for reasons why they can't succeed or shouldn't even try to succeed. And I think that striving for greatness is really important. And it definitely frustrates me when I see people who, their first impulse when they see greatness in the world is like, that shouldn't exist. Billionaires shouldn't exist. Or I should just like get everything that they have, right? And I should be able to like exert some political power to like then take the things that they've created. And I think that's like a really toxic underlying mentality that for justifying left-wing politics. And like you can look at something like redistributive taxes, right? Or policies that distribute wealth down, and you can see like, oh, these have like good effects in people's well-being and life and ability to raise happy families and so on. And that's like a positive way to look at this and a positive way to like see politics. And like the negative converse of that is like, well, I just want people who I perceive as doing better than me to like suffer, and I don't want them to exist.
No, it's very difficult, right? Because and I can only spot like the different types, like the two types of lefty that you described, where there is, I would say, a legitimate love and care for people, and we want people to be taken care of. That's kind of my entire MO, where it's like I want society to be stronger, happier, healthier. I use an example. It's like I have a lot of friends back like in my like nowhere town, and because they didn't get, say, the scholarships and the opportunities that I had, they don't have college educations, they never left our hometown, they're not living a very good life. And that horrifies me, or at least makes me very angry. I don't like the idea that you have to be exceptional to live a good life or to have a comfortable existence. I find that extremely frustrating. And I love, like, being exceptional and doing my best and like being a smart boy and like getting all the accolades and that sort of shit. But I really don't like the idea that some people shouldn't be taken care of. But you're right that a lot of this can turn to bitterness. And that's probably the most frustrating thing, is that virtue signaling. I became a lefty because I like saw suffering of people and I wanted to like, mitigate that. And I saw like memes about Bernie Sanders and like how we need to give more people like access to healthcare and like this sort of stuff. And like that'll make our society better and more caring. And then at some point it just kind of warped into this performative hatred of people. And I find that very odd. Because under a lot of I don't want to detour, and I wish more people, and this helped me in terms of being happier about and more optimistic about my politics, politics in general, not politics online. Politics online is terrible, but is that you should really focus on what you want to do and not hold so many individual personal grudges about people. Like I don't have a personal vendetta against, say, Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. I'm gonna tax the fuck out of them. But
it's not based on hate, right? Or like, no, it's not based on this negative like envy for them.
Right. Even like when I'm still like I think I'd be in favor of something as in like say like a top percentage of like a maximum wage or wealth. I'd probably cap. And even when I would do that, I don't think I did that from a place of hate. I would put that from a place of practicality, in the sense that I am legitimately worried that, as you described, if like say merchants keep getting more powerful or private industry keeps getting more powerful, that it'll eventually say like eclipse a government. Mm-hmm. I don't like the idea of some people becoming so powerful from a private sense that they can overtake the government. So it's a practical thing. It's not that I hate them. It's that I see that, if you eventually say if an individual person is worth more than, say, the GDP of the largest country of the world, then we might start looking at a problem where we have a god emperor of mankind who can essentially economically control the entire planet. And I really don't like that. Even if they're the smartest boy who did that, and I'm sure they grinded super hard and studied and everything. I really don't like that. I'm not I don't think I'd ever really be in favor of an enlightened dictatorship. I like the idea of, say, a meritocracy, where there's, like, say, teams of people who make decisions. We have, like, I've worked in, like, I lead, like, teams now for projects and things. But I don't think there's any real decision that isn't made that matters without tons of people contributing. And at the very least, like, educated people contributing. So I think it's kind of unrealistic to give that much weight to a single person that, at the very least, doesn't have the veneer of, say, social support in the case of, like, say, a popular government or the popular official. I'm more okay with having the president be the most powerful person on the planet with, like, a certain acceptable checks and balances and explicit limits on his power compared to, say, more private citizens, where I really don't know what the upper limit in terms of control of, like, money can be. If that makes sense. I rambled.
I think that's super interesting. I'm going to take a note of this about, like, one person controlling all. There's something that you said earlier about how you think it's okay to not pursue greatness or to not be, like, obsessed with being the best. It's okay if you just want to, if you're comfortable with your life. And I think this is very true, because, like, not everyone is going to be CEO of a company, nor is it a bad thing if that's not something you desire. One thing that I like about conservative politics is the emphasis on these, like, small virtues of, like, temperance or frugality or honesty, and the idea that, like, you don't have to, be like a Jesus figure, but as long as you are, like, dedicated to being, like, a good person and to being dedicated to these virtues, you can live a good life and you can be, like, a just person. And when you die, you will have lived, like, in a way that is admirable and worth honoring, more so than someone who maybe achieves greatness, but does so in evil ways. And so I do think it's important to sort of emphasize the ability to be a great and like just person, even in like the small things of just, being there for your family or your community and doing that honestly and with good heart and goodwill.
No, I agree with you. I think my brother's a really good example of this. He doesn't have any major aspirations, but he does well for himself. He has a good job. He has a loving, fantastic wife. They have a beautiful dog, and we've talked about this a lot. I'm one of the people that really wants to be one of the greats. I'm not sure if I can ever make it because I think I'm competent, but I think I've seen a lot of my limitations at this point. But he's very content with his life. He works well enough that he can fund all of his things that he wants to do, and has spent time with his wife and their dog, and they live a comfortable life, and they can eat the food they want to eat. They can go out with their friends. They can drink when they want to drink, that sort of thing. And I find that it's really admirable. I'm not really sure if I could act. If I really just don't think I'm wired that way. But I really respect when people do that, because I asked him, I'm like, because I feel like I have like almost like a calling. It sounds super like savory and like stupid, but like it's more like a drive where like I want to do stuff. I gotta like move the world just a little bit towards like what I want it to be. But I asked him if he like ever felt similar about something, and he looked me in the eye. And he was like, "No, I just want to spend time with my wife and drink with my buddies and like enjoy my life."
But that's respectable, I think.
No, it absolutely is, and honestly, he's made me a better person because of that. I like to think I have a lot of say more personal, like I've been in my friendships and stuff,
yeah,
and I've had pretty good relationships in the past, and I really value my friends. I just feel like that existence is almost different than. It's like a different side of me than the part that wants to do stuff. Where it's like if I'm, say, drinking with my buddies or playing games with my friends, or like that's a different type of Hanz. But if I'm, say, trying to grind on stream during a debate, where like I'm really tryharding, like I'm taking notes and like that sort of stuff, or when I'm at work and I'm trying to get another promotion, I'm like up. I might be moving. I don't know. I might be getting another promotion in a couple months. It depends. And I really like grinding. I really like trying, like pushing myself as hard as I can. But I kind of sort of separate those things where I enjoy that part, but I also enjoy the smaller things where I feel like if you don't have at least like a little bit of like enjoying the smaller things, life gets pretty shitty really fast, which is why I think it's super important that I have like other hobbies aside from work.
It grounds you too, right?
Yeah.
To be able to slow down and enjoy a beer with friends or whatever.
I don't just have a single beer.
Okay, a few beers with friends. Getting absolutely smashed with friends.
Yeah. I was a bit of a party guy in college. When I wasn't like I was the guy that did everything, right? I had a part-time job to help pay for things in college. I had classes all the time. I did all these extracurriculars, and I'd like I had the gym. I was like and then I would like as soon as it was like Friday night, let's go. And then I won drinking competitions. It was bad. There was this really fun thing that one group I used to like hang out with did. We called Champagne and Shackles, and they do it every Valentine's Day. And they would handcuff you with zip ties to another person, and you had to finish a bottle of champagne before they would uncuff you. And
sound fun to drink with, for sure.
Oh, we should drink together sometime. I can start drinking now if you want. If you're trying to get me.
I don't have any alcohol with me, unfortunately.
Oh,
I know. A shame.
Then I won't do that to you. I think. Oh gosh, I hate being the sober person at a party full of drunk people. So
it's worse. Babysitter.
I know. That's the worst. I always do that even when I am drinking. It takes a a massive amount to get me drunk.
See, I'm the opposite. I get drunk like so quickly.
Uh,
So I've got like either I don't drink and I'm sober, or like I've had it where I drink like one beer and I'm just like, people are like, you look really drunk right now. I'm like, what?
No, you gotta. I like if I really want to feel it, and I'll be like, I'll pound like 2 or 3 shots, and then I'll like let it sink in, and then I'll do like 1 or 2 more over like the course of the hour while I'm still drinking my regular beer, and then at that point I'm still not drunk. And also, yeah, unless also I don't really like I mean I like getting fucked up, but I don't
This is what it's like to be a 6'3" muscle-bound dude and
okay, but like
drinking.
part of the problem is though is like I'm expensive. I am not a cheap date. It's
Oh.
like when I go out to bars. This happened once as a college student. It horrified me because I was still poor, right? And I went out to a bar and like people were like, "Yeah, let's do Jello shots and shit," and we were drinking, and I was 21 and stupid, so I was like, "Fuck yeah!" And I did so many Jello shots, and I got a bill. It was like $70, and I was like, "Fuck! I don't have money for this." It was so bad, and now I don't have to do that. But I'm almost jealous because being able to get pleasantly drunk for me takes probably between 6 to 8 drinks, and for a lot of people it takes like 1 or 2, and you're feeling good and you're cruising. And so like, and also like in terms of weight, right? Like I'm a pretty like muscular guy, but I have like a huge beer belly. And part of that is just the calories. Like think about in terms of like if I've never really dieted. I don't really do a lot of physique stuff. I like being big, but I don't really like ever care about abs or that sort of stuff because I think it makes me self-conscious about my body. And I've struggled a little bit with body dysmorphia in the past, where I feel like either I'm too big or I'm too small, and I feel like kind of funny. So I focus mostly on strength, just it gives me more clear-cut goals to reach for, as opposed to, oh, am I feeling like fat today versus not fat today? So, but when I drink, how many calories are in a beer? How many calories are in a shot, right? So, like, if I can remember like being very like stringent about it in terms of like what I'm eating. I'm like, I'm being so good. I'm eating chicken and rice. I'm like, I'm taking care of myself. I'm having my protein shakes. And Friday night comes down and I drink 1,500 calories worth of alcohol every single night. And I'm like, yeah, that fucking helped. It's great. So it's just it's good, but I enjoy it. I don't really I mean I like drinking. I try and stay away from substance abuse based vices beyond that. I don't smoke. I don't smoke weed. I don't smoke cigarettes. I'll have like a cigar with my buddies every couple months or so, like one, and we'll like pass it around. But I've never considered harder drugs. I don't even particularly think I want to. I'm very big in the concept of feeling in control of myself and my body. And also, I've had moments in my life where I feel like I've either intimidated people or made people feel unsafe. And I very much worry about that, especially in like, say, party
How
settings.
so? How did you make people feel unsafe?
Like if I'm a pretty boisterous guy, and if you get drinks in me, I become even more so. And so there have been times where I'll be talking to somebody, and I'll feel like, does this person really want to talk to me? And I feel like maybe they feel like they can't really leave, and so I'll figure out eventually and just kind of like back up. And I'm a lot better at that. It was mostly when I was younger, like just starting college, and I wasn't really sure how to interact with people as well as I do now. But that's always kind of stuck with me. And I remember once, this really did stick with me. I had a really good friend in college, and we hung out all the time, watched movies and stuff. And we weren't like those kind of friends. That we weren't like friends with benefits or anything like that. And I remember one time we were sitting next to each other watching we were watching some kind of cooking show, right? And I just like kind of leaned on her because I was tired, and I wasn't like really pushing or doing anything. And nothing happened, and I left. But she messaged me the next day and said, "Hey, I felt really uncomfortable about this," and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I don't think there's anything I could have done in that moment to like not do that, because she hadn't told me, and like we've like just like sat next to each other like before. It's not like we weren't like physically like able to touch each other, but that really stuck with me, in that I want to be cognizant about how I make people feel, and I've always and when I'm drunk, I'm still like obviously in control of myself, but especially for the harder drugs, that makes me very nervous, and so I don't want to be like on like on cocaine or something, and like be like super aggro, or like get in a fight, or like hurt somebody, or that sort of thing. That's always been it's always been a personal fear of mine, that I'll hurt somebody, and not like because I have like aggression or anything, but it's more just like I really
But without knowing it, right? Because that's
yeah.
the big fear, is that like you can be totally well intentioned, but ultimately hurting someone, and that's scary.
Yeah, and so someone in your chat said like big guy problems, but it is like I've like I don't want someone to like I said, I don't want to make someone feel unsafe, or like or even like hurt, right? Like there's and because so it's just like a thing. I don't really deal with it much now, because I'm mostly surrounded by other people who are like it's not mostly dudes in the office. That's a lie. But I'm surrounded by smaller people. But it's just something that sticks with me, because it makes me. I've bumped into people, and I've like accidentally knocked people over a couple of times, and like that sort of stuff, and it just doesn't feel good. And I've also personally I've been, among other things, I've been bullied in the past by people who are like physically bigger or stronger than me, and I really, really hate how that feels. So I really don't like I don't ever want to make someone else feel like that. With the only exception being other bullies. I'm not sure how much you like follow this. I've challenged Haas Infrared to a fight, mostly just because it's partially a meme, but also I really don't like people who throw their weight around in that way and like bully other people. Because he seemed only like it's like I'm not sure if you've seen that clip where he was like challenging Dylan to a fight until he found out that Dylan knew how to fight, and then he like ran away.
I heard of that. That sounds embarrassing for him.
And it's just like that's a lot of red flags for me, because I lost fights in my life. Like in high school, I had a buddy who was like a regional wrestling champion. He was 50 pounds lighter than me. I wasn't this big, but I was still like a pretty like sizable kid, and he beat the shit out of me, right? But I really hate the idea of people who, especially physically, pick on people who are smaller than them or weaker than them, or people who they know can't fight back. That really, really bothers me. I don't have I have plenty of respect for someone if they lose a fight, especially one that they're not prepared for. But I don't have a lot of respect for people who only pick fights with people like that they know they're gonna beat. That really, really irks me. I like the idea of like being like a bully hunter in that regard. It makes me happy, especially when someone who's like as quote unquote toxically masculine as Haas, that I can bring those guys down a peg. I really enjoy that. It's a personal thing for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. Like, I had this experience with one of my friends. We were walking out of a liquor store together, and some like guy came up, and he was like sort of scary and intimidating. And I was just like, let's get out of here. Like, our car was like right here. And she engaged him a little bit, and just, she like said a few words to him, but like quickly also excused herself from the situation. But she's a trans woman, and she was telling me that, when she was a man, or when she like presented male, she had the experience of like feeling like people were afraid of her at times. And she told me like how bad of a feeling that was, and how she like never wanted people to, feel uncomfortable. And she was telling me how she appreciates when people would like show her that they're not uncomfortable around her or like scared by her or whatever. And that was an interesting insight to me because like I transitioned when I was like relatively young, right? When I was like 15, I like started presenting female, and I never like experienced, you know, being like a fully developed like guy and being in the position where like women were potentially scared of me. And so I never like considered it from that angle, but I thought it was definitely insightful to like understand that, you know, in my perspective, I'm just thinking about like survival and what like situations are safe for me. And that's like legitimate, but it's also legitimate for guys to like feel hurt sometimes that people might be afraid of them. And I don't know, that moment just always struck with me. And I think that your experiences really also speak to that and how important it is to, you know, give people the dignity of seeing them as like, you know, whole persons, not like monsters or whatever.
Yeah. It's like the idea is like, I won't hold it against a woman for, say like crossing the street if she sees me at night, but I can still tell you that it feels really fucking bad, you know, like when you, but I can't blame somebody for being nervous about that. And I think the best way of solving that, I remember you talked a lot about like say like cultural or social like pushing of like say behavior or norms. I think that's probably the easiest way to encourage people to behave better, and then I think in that way will in a lot of times solve some of the reasons why people feel so unsafe, right? Because it keeps saying like even more so like it's not okay to do this, it's not okay to take advantage of people, it's not okay to hurt people, it's not okay to do this, and we encourage each other to you know, make this behavior more the norm, that hopefully more people will feel comfortable being around other people despite like power imbalances. So I don't think we're ever going to fully, I think it's a fantasy to say that we're ever going to be able to remove
Men and
power.
women are different biologically on some fundamental level.
That meme, yeah. And then we have to find some way to like, you know, make it a little bit closer. You know, we have to like try and break down some of the like things that make it we have to at least mitigate the negative the externalities of that, right? I think I'm not personally like a gender abolitionist, but I do see the benefit in say allowing men to be more sensitive or allowing women to be more aggressive without them being considered what's it called? Like being considered either, you know, like butch or considered like even just like a bitch, like if someone's like assertive in the workplace, right? Or for men, how it's like we're still like dealing with that in terms of like toxic. I don't think it's toxic femininity, it's just like being toxic towards men online, where it's like, oh, a man can't be emotional like at all. Like if someone like I participate in this, right? Like I think a lot of us do it to a certain extent, where it's like, oh like this guy's crying, this guy like is being bothered by something, and it's
Jordan Peterson is crying, like let's, you know, destroy him for this.
Yeah, it's like, what kind of world do we want to create, or what kind of behavior do we want? Like, do you want men to cry or not? Because if we do and you make fun of us, we're not going to want to do it anymore. And I think that's pretty frustrating. And I personally also, from say like a gender perspective, I like the idea of having a broader circle of what fits into like being a man or being a woman, right? I don't think we need like a bazillion genders, but I think if we expand the boundaries of like what being a man means or what being a woman means, that a lot more people can fit inside that and feel comfortable and feel like they're something that gives them meaning and value.
Yeah, or just understanding like what the value of gender roles are, right? Because I think that once you understand like what the value is, you can accurately deconstruct the negative parts, right? So like the idea that a man, because men, you know, a man being able to like manage his emotions and act as like a steadfast rock for someone, that's like an admirable and good thing if a man can do that. But you can't take that like admirable quality and expand it into the requirement that men never show emotions. And so recognizing that like fine line where an admirable quality, transforms into something toxic is really important.
I can't agree more. It's like the idea I've seen a lot where people have asked me like, oh, would you be okay like being a house husband or something like that? And I'm like, of course. Like, if my wife is, or my husband like is doing great, right? Why do I gotta, like work a job if I can do other things to contribute to the household, right? I think there's an inclination that I think is somewhat understandable to break everything down, like to remove everything, right? Like if we get rid of all the structures, then all oppression is gone and we're all just free spirits floating around as cubes. And no one is like oppressed and everyone's happy because everyone's now fully free. But a lot of people, I would say, take not solace, but like find vindication in like different categories or values that we fit into, right?
Yeah.
Like say being a man isn't like the most important thing to me in the world, but like being a man is still integral to my existence, right? It's not like the most important thing, but it still matters to me. Being what I would consider hardworking matters to me. And like I think a lot of times when you take everything away, you leave a lot of people without a framework to live their life, and that's really bad. So like a big part of my issue with a good amount of like lefties is that we are right in that like, oh yeah, like the church can be oppressive, like family structures can be oppressive, right? Like all these things can be oppressive, but if we just get rid of these institutions and we don't replace them with anything or like something better, then we're leaving a lot of people just extremely atomized, and they have nothing to latch onto to feel like they have vindication or meaning. And that really fucks with me because I'm like I want like from a socialist perspective, right? I would love like say community, like sports leagues and stuff like that, where the communities can like interact with each other, or like I did this thing in high school called the private school I went to. They mandated that you go to some religious service, but they gave you like 6 options. And I'm an agnostic atheist. I don't really care. But I went to the philosophy cafe where we would talk about like different moral stuff, and I thought that was really fun. And I think being able to have these aspects of community is extremely important. We just have to find some way to mitigate the worst aspects of it while keeping the good aspects, because we just keep throwing shit out with the bathwater, and it leaves a lot of people better off, right? Because like people aren't being oppressed by say like a tyrannical church in their community, but now they're still worse off because that community is now less connected.
I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that with the deconstruction and breaking down of these social norms and barriers and institutions, you also see rising rates of anxiety, depression, suicide, and so on. I mean, I think humans are storytelling creatures. And the reason why like we clawed our way out of the jungles was because we were able to pass knowledge from generation to generation. And so humans, as a culture, as a species, evolved together. We slowly learned and passed on traditions about how to hunt animals or build tools. And we do that today with knowledge. And when we talk about like gender, what we're really talking about are cultural stories that we tell each other to help guide our lives. When we show like a man and a woman in a successful, happy relationship, how that happens, how they talk to each other, what we're really doing is like modeling a form of relationship that has worked for all of human history, right? And we're teaching younger generations how to interact with each other on the basis of respect and honesty and so on. And so when you talk about, abolishing gender or destroying these categories, that kind of abolishment is not something that I think is bad in of itself necessarily, because I can imagine a world where we abolish the institutions of gender or the church or whatever, and we create things to replace them. and we create new narratives that serve useful purposes. I can imagine that world. But when people are talking about abolishing gender, unfortunately, I think they're not often talking about the positive aspect. How do we build cultural norms and stories that guide people towards, lives of virtue and fulfillment? They're talking about destroying a concept that has existed across civilization and time for all of human history because they dislike one particular toxic element of it. It strikes me as like a very dangerous road to go down. And I say that as someone who doesn't believe that it's fundamentally or inherently wrong, but it can very quickly lead into toxic belief systems.
No, I agree with you. And I think it clouds a lot of thinking in the sense of, I would say, being, and even just achieving the goals that we want. Because I think a lot of like lefties are good people, right? I think a lot of them care about the world in the same way that I care about the world, even if like say we're more toxic about how we express it. But in regards to, oh gosh, I just lost it. Oh fuck. Oh no, I sound dumb again. Fuck.
It happens.
Yeah, oh yeah, sorry. A lot of people, or a lot of lefties, we seem like we have this extreme intolerance for imperfect things or imperfect institutions, and I don't know how. And I feel like it serves us badly in regards to fixing a lot of problems that we care about. It's like the reform versus revolution debate that like a lot of lefties used to have. We don't really seem to do it anymore. And I think it's mostly because we've just filtered into our own enclaves. And I'll be honest, as much as I love talking with people who want to overthrow the United States government, I really don't like that. So, yeah. But a lot of it, I remember talking, this is specific about the CIA. Someone was like, we should abolish all of our intelligence agencies and like make new ones. I'm like, why can't we just like make our existing ones better? I don't understand why we have to do a whole new thing. And they're like, because the old one is like, a history of corruption and bad things and stuff. I'm like, okay, but like America has a history of bad things. And I assume that's why you also want to like get rid of America and like do like new socialist America. But like a lot of the reforms or a lot of the issues that a lot of people seem to want, they seem possible through the lens of reform. Like, yeah, we can never say get rid of the history of the CIA or other intelligence agencies, overstepping their bounds and infringing upon the rights of people. We can never get rid of that. But if we just call it, the Poggers Intelligence Agency instead, and get rid of,
then it's all good.
Because guess what? Like a lot of the same people who were in that institution, they're going to work in the next one, and so a lot of it just feels extremely ideological. And I sort of mean that as a pejorative, but I'm also ideological, right? But I think a lot of the time, the difference between, say, a guiding ideology that's like kind of helpful is that you have, say, certain principles that you're trying to aspire towards, and everything else is just sort of the method of which you get there, or the policy that you support to get there. Like there's like multiple ways to, carve a cake. But a lot of the time it seems that there's one solution or like nothing. And anyone else who disagrees with that is 100% wrong. And I think it creates more divisions, at least among the left, than absolutely necessary, right? A lot of the people I fight, I'll be honest, we probably agree on like most shit, right? We find crazy shit to disagree with, right? Like if someone actually cares about the democratic process and they vote in American elections and they're on the left, us arguing about whether we should abolish school is a nothing fucking like debate. I mean, it's a banger, it's fun, right? I can make people look crazy, but I mean, we'd probably still vote for the same politicians unless they were just so far gone that they don't believe in electoralism.
Or it's like Gammy is talking about arguing with people about like ghost gender. Listen, I'm gonna be honest. As a person, I love Gammy, but this does not fucking matter. Like this is the most like internet bullshit debate that I've ever heard of, and like has no bearing on real life.
Well, that's why a lot of people think I'm transphobic, because like I I may have started the xenogender discourse. And I'm really sorry about that.
Xenogenders are stupid.
I made
And they should be
a
made fun of.
I was so so I was somewhat confused, right? And so I made a poll where I essentially said, "Hey, how can someone identify as something but not be that thing?" Because that really bothers me, right? Like, and here's like my main issue with Xenos in general, right? Is I really don't like the line of logic that follows. If I say a person is helicopter gender, but they're not a helicopter, but say a trans woman is actually a woman, though, in all the ways that we like think that it matters.
Maybe
they're a lady, and so I can't comprehend a system where both of those things exist. And so I sort of came into like this frustration where I was like, guys, like, how do we, like, I can't square this circle, and no one seems to be able to do that with me beyond just telling me that all of gender and everything is arbitrary. And like, I find that extremely unsatisfying as an answer. I absolutely hate ultimate skepto like arguments. They're so annoying. I saw them in philosophy classes in college, and I don't like seeing them now. They're just, it doesn't do anything for me, because like that sort of, it takes away all meaning from things. And I don't, and like logically I could grant it and say, yeah, you're right, everything's infinitely skeptical, like there's no categories at all and like nothing means anything, but congratulations, we're all fucking like, I can't like even exist at that point because I don't know whether I'm real or not. I don't know whether like I'm breathing or not. Like, fuck, like that. If I feel like if I buy into that philosophy, it makes me kind of want to die. Like, I don't know if I could say that on Twitch, but it's like I find that extremely unsatisfying, and it drives me nuts. And that people think that's a good argument, where it's like, oh, just because something is socially constructed or quote unquote arbitrary, or that it could have ended up a different way, but it didn't, that we have to remove it, or it's not like providing any level of social utility. It fucks with me every single time.
I think it's absurd. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
I mean, like, I also think it's a reduction of like gender identity to just like a name tag, or, you know, a meaningless sort of statement about your personality. And I think gender, especially for me and for a lot of other trans people, is so much more fundamental and so much more meaningful than that. And so when someone like is trying to tell me that their identity as a ghost or a star or whatever is as meaningful as like my identity as a woman, something that I had to like fight for, and that I had to like, you know, struggle against my like tiny rural town to assert myself and to like prove that this is meaningful and important to me, truly. And something that I've like, you know, that causes me a great deal of suffering, just in like an inherent sort of dysphoria sense, but I've pushed through that because it was so important to me. And then someone tells me like, it's just a matter of personal expression, it's just like another name. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not just that. And you're going against like so much of my experience trying to prove to people that it's not just a name. It's not something that I can just like see as, you know, any other superfluous way of presenting myself. It's very important. And so I think from like that sort of trans level, it hurts me like very deeply.
I know what you mean. I actually made this exact argument during a debate I had on Xenogenders, where I was like, if someone can just choose not to be trans, why do I have to like respect or in any way like say acclimate, or what's the wrong word? Accommodate a trans person, right? Because if everything is arbitrary, you can choose to be whatever you want.
If there's no underlying biological part, why does it matter?
Yeah, like what? Like yeah, like at that point, like if that's what we're going with, then like I don't care. Like, and I think they know that's wrong, because like we still care about misgendering. We still care about like how people present and whether or not people like respect that. So it really just feels as if we're just running with the arbitrary meme until everything falls apart, and then it's still like completely, let's say, validating other constructs that could be gotten rid of just as easily. And I find that so frustrating, and I really dislike that. And also, like personally, maybe I guess I'm farther left than you, but this goes back to the transphobe meme. Like, I hate being called a transphobe for that, because I don't think that's like an inherently negative thing. And I guess like it's really hard. I can imagine how much harder it is for you.
You don't think it's an inherently negative thing to be a transphobe? Uh-oh. Hans, what are you saying?
I do think it's inherently negative to be a transphobe, all right?
Okay.
Like, yeah, I think, oh God, it was really, the way what you said it, like, I think that's really meaningful. I was gonna do like a shithead meme about like, but about 40 like percent in, I was like, oh fuck, like this is really.
No, tell me the shithead meme.
No, oh God.
No, you have to. You're forced to.
No, I was this fucking thing where, okay, so there was this horrific Demon Mama tweet where someone said essentially like the same thing you just said, where they were like, I'm trans and my identity is really important to me, and so people telling me that like all of identity is arbitrary and like meaningless really, really bothers me.
It's hurtful.
Yeah, and then Demon Mama quotes me, and they were like, "You disgust me. You're the greatest villain of all time. The fact that you would gatekeep others because your personal suffering and experience is absolutely ludicrous. You are the worst kind of person, and I hate you." Like, Metal Gear Solid theme like playing in the background, and I'm just like, "Fuck!" Like, so I felt like that was the wrong time to say that. Especially like after you opened up like that. So but now that you asked, I can't. I don't have to apologize. But I don't understand. Gosh, like, sorry. It's just for a lot of me. Like for me, it feels kind of silly. And that's not like the reasons why like I don't personally validate the Xeno people because it feels silly. I'm much bigger brain than her, right? I have like way stronger reasons as to why I don't do that, but I feel like a lot of times we fight over language and we use language as a bludgeon, and a lot of things that I would say both the left and the right do. I'd say the left is doing this considerably more successfully, is that we keep pushing the boundaries of what words mean, to the point where, and sometimes I would say that that's good, right? Like, say, including trans women in women, I would say is pretty important. And I think that's a good expansion of language. And I think sometimes we can expand this to the point where things become useless. This is actually a big problem I have with Mr. Girl, is that he says everything is on a spectrum, right? Like, say, say rape and an awesome, blowjob from a friend of mine are both, they're on the spectrum of sex, right? Like, or sexual acts. And I find a lot of times that makes conversations harder or like to have, or worse in terms of comprehension, because people don't know what you mean. Because like when someone says, like someone calls me, say, transphobic, right? Does that mean that I'm, like actively like trying to murder trans people, or, like I misgender every trans person that I see, or like I actively argue against like the rights of like trans people? No, it means I'm not okay with Xenogenders. And if like you can say that not being okay with Xenogenders is the same as fucking like, as the other thing, then like that word doesn't hold any meaning anymore. It's the same way as like calling like your uncle, who doesn't really say anything, but like might say something off color like once at Thanksgiving, like is a racist in the same way that like Hitler was a racist. Like really? Like, because I think you respond to those people very differently. But in terms of the narrative, it's a lot easier, and I think it's easier to paint someone as worse than they are, because because it's on a spectrum, right? I'm technically a transphobe because I'm on the spectrum of transphobia because I don't like xenogender people, right?
People
I'm okay
who
with everything
are pro-trans are on the spectrum of transphobia still,
yes.
Right? Like by this definition, because everyone's on the spectrum. They're just on one end, and maybe if they have like don't express their belief to like the fullest confidence, they might be like slightly leaning towards the transphobic end. I gotta say also, it seems like totally absurd to me in one sense that you'd be called a transphobe at all, because you're making like statements to me that I would consider like enormously transpositive. Probably you're even like making them like in stronger language than I would personally make them. And so you strike me as like a very transpositive person. but it maybe speaks to like the kind of environment that our media culture and our Twitch culture is in, that like not supporting xenogenders is considered transphobic, or even that like xenogenders would be presumed to like be anywhere near like the heart of trans issues, and you know, having one opinion or on the other would mean that you have opinions on trans stuff in general. I mean, I would say that like in my conception, xenogenders are like not really a part of the trans discussion, in the sense that like people with xenogenders I would not consider like properly trans, or not trans in like the meaningful sense that another person is trans. And so like to reject them doesn't seem like even a statement about trans identity. It seems like a statement about like kids on the internet like co-opting an actual political movement.
Oh yeah, I agree with you there, and because I'm not really sure how I deal with that, because a lot of the time, but I know what you mean in terms of like, say like I would consider myself like enormously far left, right? Like if I had to pick right now, I would still vote for fucking Bernie Sanders, like in the primary, like over other people. And like in regards to like what policy I want to see proposed, and I want fucking free college for I want free healthcare that includes like hormones and surgery for trans people who want to transition. I want like all these like things. I'm like pretty much like left on almost every issue. I'm a little bit different in terms of say like foreign policy and that kind of stuff. I'm a bit more hawkish, mostly because I have like a realist. Like I said, I did like international like economics and stuff in college, and it kind of like shaped me a little bit in regards to that.
Can I just say something interesting? It strikes me that like oftentimes on the issues that people are most informed on, they tend to be either the most moderate or even like slightly more reactionary. Like I would say like my positions on trans stuff, as well as like other trans people I know, even if they're more like lefterly people, their positions on gender are like a little bit more conservative, a little bit more moderate. So I think it's striking to me that like you say like, well, foreign policy, like I took these classes and they really shaped me, and now I have this appreciation for like maybe more moderate or like right-wing approaches.
Well, I think part of that is to become educated on certain things, you have to engage with like those ideas. And in regards to say foreign policy, it's I'm gonna say something and then I'm gonna like caveat it so I don't sound like a fucking crazy person. I think in a lot of ways there is a much like pretty like almost like ironclad like correct position to hold, and then after that it gets really foggy really fast. So like in terms of like trans people, right? Obviously let people transition, let people socially transition, don't try and convert them, give access to hormones once they desire, give access to that, like past that I don't fucking know, there's we have like bodies where people are determining like how long do you have to like be on hormones before you can compete in sports and stuff like that, and all sorts of things that we're still kind of like I'd say the evidence is like more for like after a certain period of time like allow people to compete in sport and that sort of stuff, and I support those things. But in regards for like a lot of stuff, it really does feel like it's an inability to grapple with other people's or other viewpoints. And that's just because we encourage that, right? Academia is so different. I'd still say it's like you could say it's like left leaning, right? But it's so different by virtue of the challenge that it proposes in terms of thinking. I had a moderate conservative policy professor who fucking bullied the shit out of me, and it made me a much stronger policy analyst. Because he was like, Hanz, you have to like understand why like the American healthcare system the way it is. Because like I was like, I was like, fuck it, to the moon, and then like and he would stop me. He's like, bro, this is like how American healthcare has developed the last 100 years. It's a lot more fucking complicated. You can't just go beyond and like make this happen. And I know that's your end goal, and like that's a fine goal to have. Just realize that like how the system has been created and how it currently functions, like that if you're going to change it, it's going to take probably considerable like more amount of time, and he made me actually do a policy debate, and he gave me the conservative position. I had to like argue against Obamacare. It was really fucking shitty. I mean, I won that debate, but that's because my opponents were bad at it.
Impressive.
Yeah. Hey. No, but a lot of that, I think it just comes from exposure. And even like if I can give all the good, like all the arguments for say like for a conservative position, I can provide them. I still think a lot of them are dumb. But like knowing what they are and being able to adequately describe them is something that so many people have that that's fundamentally impossible, to the point where like if people can't understand like say why a person is conservative or why a person like might vote Republican, then like what are we supposed to do with like these people, right? Like
Or
like
just
at that
people
point,
who say like, oh, it's all crazy. Like it's all, nonsense. Yeah.
yeah, because I think there are and this is like more of a personal thing, a lot of a lot of the conservatives that I met online are pretty nice. I mean, some of them are like crazy, but no crazier than the craziest lefty that I've met. You know, a lot, and I think a lot of like more moderate conservatives are just people who kind of want the government to stay out of their business and like live like their lives. They don't particularly hate trans people or gay people or like black people or anything like that. They're like they just really kind of want to be left alone. And a lot of times there are a lot of single issue voters. And I think this is kind of like a frustrating way of looking at the world, but like if someone only cares about lowering taxes and they vote Republican, like and they don't have an expansive knowledge of every other thing, like I wouldn't like immediately call them transphobic, right? It's like the difference between like I have a lot of distaste for the Republican Party. I don't have a lot of distaste for individual Republicans. Like if say like if they like there was a poll of Republicans from 2021. And it was the first time ever that a majority of Republicans were in favor of gay marriage. So I don't think it's like I wouldn't say it's correct to say that like all Republicans hate gay people. But then I can look at say the Republican Party's policy platform and how they actually still actively oppose gay marriage. I think all but let's say 2 states. Then I can say the Republican Party, I'd be comfortable calling them homophobic. But I wouldn't be comfortable calling say like a random Republican who might not even think about it like homophobic. Because most people, when I talk to them, they're relatively accepting of like social stuff. Like my like I also come from a more conservative area family. They know I'm bi, right? They don't they don't seem to hate me. They know bi people exist or gay people exist. They don't seem to like have any great hatred for them. I think a lot of that goes to show that like you can actually change like cultural norms for the better, right? Because like if you can make the default position not being homophobic, like that's a fucking huge W. Like because like say 20 years ago, the opposite was true, right? Where the generic thing was, yeah, like I don't like the gays, and like now it's like I don't care, and like obviously that's not where we want it to be, but that's still so much better than where it was, and I appreciate progress, even if it's slow. And while I can sympathize with people who are angry that it's not going faster, I temper that with the frustration that they don't seem to be doing a lot to like make it go fast, if that makes sense. Where it's like you care about this, but you just LARP online about revolution. I don't see you doing any volunteering or anything like this. It very much frustrates me. But that goes like it's a collage of things I think make the online left an inherent negative like space to be. So it can be fun, but I don't think it's ever going to be a successful political movement, and I don't think it's ever going to outgrow its toxicity. I think it's kind of necessary in that space. It's both a safe place for people to be as expressive as they want, provided they still have a certain degree of hatred for certain groups. So,
I mean, yeah, I think it's just like we have to sort of evaluate what it means to progress in society and really seriously ask ourselves that, because I think sometimes when we look at like progressives, there's this group of people who they've basically gotten their way on social issue after social issue after economic issue for like the last 600 years, since like monarchies ruled Europe. We've like slowly moved left.
Because we're right. But sorry, keep going.
Maybe, but like they've gotten all of their agendas passed, slowly but surely, and yet this group of people seems to be like vocally some of the most dissatisfied people about the state of the world. And they like I watched this Netflix video or movie, I don't know, documentary with Bo Burnham. And Bo Burnham, he really has like two moods in this. And the moods are like incredibly progressive, like rah social issues, and horribly depressed. And it seems like, the perfect marker of like the outcomes when you look at like mental health of progressive people. They seem to be like totally disenchanted with the state of the world, and oftentimes, showing higher rates of depression and anxiety than their conservative peers, despite ostensibly living in the most progressive era ever, right? Where, a common talking point is how people who are born male should be allowed to get whatever hormones and surgery they want to become women, right? That's like a common thing that is being accepted in our society. And even the conservatives are running trans politicians in California. And so you'd expect progressives to be like enormously happy, but they aren't. And it makes me wonder if the progressive platform is really progress, or if people have just deluded themselves into believing that the next step, the next progressive agenda is going to be the thing that makes them happy.
So if I can defend them for a second.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I think there has to be a certain level of dissatisfaction with how things are to want to make a change. I don't and without that motivating factor, I don't think a lot of progress would ever happen, right? Even like I consider myself a pretty like politically optimistic guy. There's still things that really rankled me, and if I wasn't so quietly livid about like how like certain things are unjust, I probably wouldn't be so motivated to try and like fix things. So I can absolutely understand the frustration, but a lot of the time it really does seem as if we struggle with taking W's, where it's like take yes for an answer and that the majority of people agree with you, for like one moment appreciate that we like have made the world better, and then we can keep fighting. And that doesn't seem to happen. It seems as if we like we win one thing and now we have another thing to keep fighting. And like I think some of these things are good, but I also would say that from a mindset perspective, I think the left is very good at the necessities of life. That's what we care about. We want people to be I mean physical necessity. I see your face. Let me explain. We want people to be fed. We want people to be housed. We want people to have health care. That keeps you alive. It doesn't really make you live or let you live. A lot of things that make life worth living are your friends, are your hobbies, your interests. And so oftentimes, and I'm guilty of this. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I want society in terms of quality of life in regards to, say, like standard of living stuff, like, housing, food, the amount of money that you have. I want to get to a certain baseline, and after that, you're kind of on your own. I want to give you the tools to make. I'll keep you alive. I'll keep you happy and healthy. I'll keep you healthy. But you being happy, I'll give you the tools to be happy, and I'll give you the resources to make sure that you're not like actively depressed. But at some point, it's got to be your choice. And I think the left is very bad about that, about making meaning for ourselves. And oftentimes, people find meaning in the struggle in the same way that people find meaning in the grind. But we really struggle with having other other joys, the other joys of life that we don't really have. It's like there's this I'm not sure if you've heard of him. His name's Innuendo Studios. He did like something called the alt-right playbook, and I used to really like it. I think it's a really great descriptor of the alt-right. But I think more than some of it is also a descriptor of the left, in that it seems like we're constantly depressed, we're constantly angry, we're constantly sad, and the anger is justified. But we should probably try and be a happier group of people, and like maybe that sounds somebody coming from someone who's constantly angry, right? But like at my core, I think I'm a pretty happy guy, and at least an equal measure to my anger. And a lot of us really struggle with that, whether it's finding meaning, whether it's finding friends. A lot of like the concept of being terminally online is that they don't have anything. Oh my god, 1 second, sorry. I don't. I'm not addressing chat, but when Felix, yeah, I'll fucking say it louder. All right, a lot of progressives have no meaning in their life beyond like what they feel like makes them seem like good people. Okay, I'm fucking sorry. Like if that hurts your feelings, like you're just stupid. Like I just like what it. I don't know what to say because I've seen like so many people who are left leaning who I think should be happy people. Like, they're surrounded by like people who, like supposedly care about them and validate them and like all of their identities and like, eccentricities and all of this. How are we also fucking sad all the time? And it's so frustrating.
I saw a study about like where people place moral weight, and it looked at people with different political views and found that progressive people who identified as most left-leaning, were also the most likely to place moral weight on things like amoebas and space rocks over the moral weight that they placed on family, friends, and community. And it was the exact opposite with conservatives, where conservatives placed the most moral weight on like the things closest to them that they dealt with in day-to-day life. And I think it's an insightful insight into the moral priorities of these different political groups.
Well, I think it's also a reason why I would say a lot of conservatives are quote unquote nice as people, even if they have atrocious politics, because they're focused on what's immediately around them, right? But I would say this is a common pitfall that a lot of lefties, including myself, fall into, where we're like, fuck it, I'm right about the positions. It's okay if I'm an asshole, because I'm still a fundamentally good person, right? Because I believe the right things. And I think that's a dangerous mindset to have, because essentially it gives you the ability to do anything you want. Because if you say my goals are just, I care about transphobia and sexism and giving people healthcare and housing and all sort of stuff, it doesn't matter if I'm like, terrible to people in my interpersonal life. But like they are making society worse still. Like even if you like the good things, if you cause other negative externalities, you're still causing problems. And I think it's really important for a lot of for progressives to find other meaning in their life beyond politics. Another reason why I don't want to do this full time is if I just did this, I'd be really fucking miserable. I think I wouldn't have as much fun as I do. I like my day job. So.
Yeah, I think that's good. Hans, I'm probably gonna let you go here. Thank you so much for talking with me. We got a good 2 hours out of it.
Oh shit! I didn't. Time flies. This was really nice.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you. We'll see about Civ, okay?
Okay.
If you promise to make a Kana boy not bully me.
We're gonna take like big handicaps.
I appreciate that you want to play with me.
Yes.
I don't but the way that you phrased it.
What do you mean?
Hurt my feelings.
Big handicaps.
Yeah.
I
was already gonna.
We're basically gonna cut off our arms so little noob boys like you can maybe have a chance, Hans. That's what we're gonna do.
I've been nice for 2 hours. I'm not gonna. I appreciate it. I'm competitive.
It would be fun. We're trying to get like a few other people as well, like Stardust, Bastia, but I think it'd be fun. I think what the hope would be is to have like a more cool casual game where like in between turns we can like chat about stuff.
Sounds really good. I'd really like that. Thank you for inviting me. That sounds really good. And it was nice to talk to you. You seemed you met and exceeded expectations in terms of like stuff. You seem just like really interesting. And I really hope you stick around in the space, because we need more people who can like have cool conversations. Although I do want to debate you at some point. I'm ready to burn this
Okay.
bridge.
Okay, brilliant.
I'm ready to be so mean to you.
Let's get into the mud. Let's roll around. Okay. Thank you, Hans.
So we'll roll around later. Have a good night, okay?
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Cool. That was fun, right? That was very fun. I really hope we get the Civ game down. I'm gonna message Akano Boy. Oh, we're gonna play Civ 5 also, yeah. Damn, good stuff. Probably gonna close out the stream. Does anyone know how to raid someone? Because I was told that you must raid people. Oh my god, how do I do this? Oh, raid? Okay. Raid. Star dust. Okay, you have to stay in so that Stardust gets like a bunch of people. Okay. Yeah, Stardust is super cool. You should definitely follow her. All right. Bye, guys.